Yeah, how you doing? Can you hear me? Oh shoot! Hold on. I messed up. Audio.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, it wasn't coming through my headphones. I don't know why.
How I sound? Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
I hear somebody got some feedback.
Hold up. I think it's you know what? Ah, I figured it out. Is that better?
Hold on, let me see now. Yeah, that's better because I can't hear myself on y'all end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had my channel up on the other side, trying to make sure that the music was going in while we're waiting for people. Um, my buddy cop out in Orange County is going to be joining us today to give us a little bit of perspective from that.
Come on, man.
Okay. We
Damn.
I'm watching the Lions
live
game,
right
so
now?
y'all are we?
Yeah, I was about to say I'm watching the Falcons. Yeah, that's what's going to ask. We live right now, Ace.
Hey, since we
Huh?
live?
Yeah, we got you on right now. Yeah, y'all can chill out. I'm gonna pull back up the banner and the music for a minute. All right.
No, it's saying live.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got you live.
Yeah,
I'm
so
gonna
they can hear us.
play the
They
intro
can
in a
hear us
minute.
right now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm gonna pull up the intro in a minute. My cop buddy, if he can't make it on right now, StreamYard is giving him some stuff. So, and the last person to hop on is most likely going to be Chad.
All right.
All right.
It should be Chad, and then my boy from the Marines, and that should have it us ready to go for tonight.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Phone.
Well, either way, I'm sure y'all heard about the shooting in Ohio. Once again, Columbus ain't even that bad
I'm
of
gonna
a
be
city.
honest. I didn't hear about.
Isn't that interesting?
I feel bad right now. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
It's all
I
right.
haven't heard.
You don't have to worry about it. There's been very little reporting on it whatsoever. You know, the election's over. Neither side can use it. It's something that just falls back in the news because right now is the transition and the court cases are the major news stories at the moment. So
I'm trying to think. Did I hear about it?
Okay.
Come on, Detroit. Y'all got to beat Green Bay, man.
Hey, don't feel bad. I'm a Pats fan, and we got whooped.
Well, y'all in the rebuilding.
Don't come here
The
this
rebuilding.
Pats fan. Y'all done had so many champions. Yeah, come on,
Really.
man. Y'all.
I swear, it's like every time we look like we're doing good, we throw an interception and we go backwards.
Man, how many Super Bowls y'all done won since 2005?
6. Oh wait, since 2005?
Man, you need
since
to stay out.
2005 it'd be since
2005
since 2000.
Since 2006 Super Bowls.
Yeah. To be honest, it could have been more, but our injury roster is always full. So, but you know it is what it is. The game.
Jalen Hurts is the touchdown the same.
Huh?
Nah, I was just saying Jalen Hurts just threw a touchdown against the Saints. You good? Keep going.
No, I
Yeah,
saw
like-
that. That's good shit.
Yeah, we watching like it's I'm watching the Lions play Green Bay. Come on, man. Damn it. Is they in the red zone
Hey,
already?
I used to hate on Aaron Rodgers, but it's really hard to not give him props for everything that he can do.
Who was that? You talking about Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
Oh, he's still good.
All right.
I see height for
All right. Got my boy Sam on. How you doing, Sam?
Good. How are you guys?
All right, how you doing?
Not bad.
hey, what's going on?
Just trying to hope Detroit can pull this win out against Green Bay, with Green Bay in the red zone. Take that, get a pick. They scored. Damn it.
So, Sam, tell the guys a little bit about yourself before we get going. We're just waiting for Chad to hop in. He has some stuff that he was trying to move around, but if he can't hop in, it's all good. I knew that from the start, but he's making a valiant effort to get in here with us. Good, Chad, Sam, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. My name is Shariff Muzayen, actually. I go by Sam. It's my initials. It's easier for people to pronounce and remember. But United States Marine Corps. I did 5 years, two tours of duty in Afghanistan. I came back. I became a police officer at the local PD. I was there for a total of 5 years.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You said your name was what?
Sharif.
What's your first name again? Say Sharif?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no doubt. My bad. I even interrupt you. I thought you said Sharif. I was just checking. I'm sorry. I haven't met too many. I ain't gonna even lie. I ain't met no Sharif that was white. I'm sorry. I just had to get that out there.
Yeah.
Go
I'm
ahead.
like, Sharif. All right, my dog. Let's go.
Go ahead.
Let's go, man. Let's go. All right. I'm sorry, man.
Go ahead and explain to him, Muzzy.
So, yeah, I did. I became a local police officer with the city of Orange in California, and I got injured working. I got hit by a drunk driver, and ultimately lost my left leg above the knee. So now I'm retired, retired cop, going back to school.
Sorry to hear that.
Explain how you got Sharif, brother. Explain to him, because you're biracial too.
Yeah. So my father is Middle Eastern. He's born in Palestine in 1937. You know, back when it was still Palestine. My mom is a little country girl from Florida. So I grew up actually with my father speaking Arabic and German and English, and that's it. I'm really white. My siblings aren't, but for some reason I just look more like my mother than my father. At least skin wise.
All right.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Me and Muzzy served together, same unit, both division MPs. And I knew, as far as solutions and discussions like this, we could get good analysis from the law enforcement side of the aisle from Muzzy. He always does his due diligence when it comes to reading regulations, understanding what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do, and the best way to de-escalate situations. Corey, so I'll go ahead and introduce yourselves so that Muzzy has a good idea of who you are and your experience.
Well, my resume ain't too much of nothing. As you see, G Frazier, Corey, that's my name is Corey, but G Frazier's name, went by in the streets. Inspires the Block is my Twitter and social media handle name. Born and raised in Flint, Michigan, living down here in Atlanta now, and I'm with this guy that's above me. We co-hosts of two famous, at once upon a time, famous YouTube shows, Brown Paper Bag podcast and Purple Pill Politic. but we got some things going on. We rebranding and retooling, and about to make a splash in 2021.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm in Georgia now too.
Oh, okay.
But I'm way down south.
Where at?
Camden County.
And what city is that? What city is that over there?
Kingsland. Just the first city north of Jacksonville, north of Florida.
Okay. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Sol, man. My name is as you can see, SolG. Yeah, my name is SolG. Born and raised in Atlanta. I am, like I said, the co-host of the rebranding of the show, Brown Paperbag Podcast and Purple Pill Politics. I'm a small business owner. I mostly drive trucks, do stuff like that. I pretty much been in the political space for, I don't know, I'd probably say like the past 4 years, but I have been, I'm a former service member as well. I was in the Army. Then I was just, supply. So I was just real chill when I was back in the Army. What else, man? That's pretty much all you really need to know about me, man. I speak my mind, I speak my opinion. And yeah, man, got some big things coming out in 2021. We're in the process of bringing a new social media platform to the airways. So y'all be on the lookout for that.
All right. So let's get right into it. This past year has been an absolute shit show as far as news cycles and what has been spread out as far as the court cases that nobody has a clear understanding of because both sides omitted facts and to fit whatever narrative that they happen to be using. But I want to get into what makes each of our ideas of what law enforcement should be, and then we're going to get into the ideas, the competing ideologies of law enforcement. You have protect and serve, and you have law enforcement itself, regulation enforcement, legal enforcement of whatever laws that happen to get pushed down the pipeline, policies that contribute badly to community relations, and put cops in a precarious situation where you have good cops that get lumped in with bad cops, and bad policy can turn a good cop into a bad cop, or could give cover to an actual bad cop. So let's start with Shariff. For anybody that's watching right now, I was military police along with Shariff. DOD security, casino security, worked with other law enforcement agencies throughout my term with both, and was about to go into law enforcement. I study it in law because I'm kind of a nerd like that, and that's my background, so you understand where I'm coming from. Go ahead, Shariff, go with your idea of what law enforcement should be, and the two competing ideologies that I just laid out, and how you balance the two.
Yeah, so as a police officer myself, and not just in the military, but also later as a civilian, for me it was very, very important that I build rapport with my the people of my city, with my city, with the people within it, and that I do my best to help them, no matter whether it was in because of a criminal investigation, or it was just random things. Often it has nothing to do with actual police work. It was just trying to assist them financially, get them help, get them located with somebody who can get them a job. It was kind of all over the board, but this is what it should be. As of I know police officers were mainly there to enforce the law and protect the people, but It should be more than that. And our city was really, really big on community policing. And if you go to Orange, you'll see that, because a lot of the people there, and most of the people there, are going to be very, very positive about their police force. We had no riots. We have few protests, but they never turn violent in our city. Santa Ana, Anaheim, the other cities around there, yes, but ours did not, because the people actually really like us, because we're doing the best to help them pass that approach call to call. What is your problem? I can't help you, or I can't help you. Thank you. Have a good day. And if policing was conducted in this manner, no matter what neighborhood you're in, no matter what place of this country you're in, if you care for the people more than just doing your job, just going in there and coming back home, then you will also see a very positive development of the people themselves. Now, is there bad policies that force officers to do, especially young officers, officers who are still on probation, who are not allowed to just not, just call any type of situation off. I mean, there is situations where you can just go like, okay, listen, this is what I can do to help you. You technically did something stupid, but it's not a big deal. So, we can just make sure you don't do this again. And traffic violations, little tiny things, or possession of marijuana, possession of weed. I never cited anybody for this stuff. But there is policies in some departments where there's no tolerance, and no tolerance means no tolerance. And when an officer is found not to have cited somebody or arrested somebody for possession of that, then they get in trouble. They get written out, and when they're on probation, they get kicked out. So a lot of young officers are very, very scared of these really ridiculous policies. And you see that, for example, in New York, not too long, like under Giuliani, where he had the no tolerance policies, and many of them were just straight up unconstitutional, but they were enforced. And unfortunately, that's a shame. I just try to stick to my roots as a constitutional conservative before I just implement and violate people's rights, even if that means that I am going to go back and get in trouble. That's just me, But like I said, some officers are, especially young officers, are usually under a lot of pressure to just do what their police department tells them. On the other hand, you have police departments that do actually really, really good with policies. They leave the officers a lot of room, and their mentors, their sergeants, their corporals, and stuff like this are not as strict and governed, and that usually leads to a more productive environment, not just for the police officer, but also for the people, and just safer environment all around.
All right. Whoever wants to pop in next, go ahead.
Run the question by me one more time.
What you think law enforcement should be, based on your understanding of it. I know, Corey, you have your own personal experiences with it. I do as well. What you believe law enforcement should be, and the two competing ideologies, protect and serve versus law enforcement, regulatory enforcement, things of that nature, and how you think we should be interacting with each other.
It's no secret that me growing up, I never had a real positive look at police. Even when I see them now, it's still not that that kind of energy that I should have for law enforcement. Okay, it's based on experience. I'm not saying that all law enforcement are bad, but what I am saying is that based on my interactions, because I come from urban areas, I've lived in urban areas all my life. Back in Flint, Michigan, urban area. Down here in Atlanta, in the Lakewood district, urban area. So the interaction isn't always of good faith, if I can use that word. But I believe that it should be under the banner protect and serve. You know, how that got lost over the years, I don't know. It's based on the inside policies, you know, within the police departments. But yeah, that's just my take on that. You know, when it comes to police, I wish it was better. I wish I could have more confidence in police. But that's just what it's like. For example, I don't even have none in my family. Like, I don't have a police officer in my family nowhere. So to kind of skew my outlook on how I deal with police, like, for example, I live around the corner from where Rashad Brooks was killed at down here in Atlanta, and the Wendy's was burnt down. Like, that's the area I live in. And so, you know, that's just, you know, the things that I've encountered over my life with police. You know, so, but I think there needs to be reform. How we do that, I don't know, because I believe it's more so in the ideology or the thinking of the officers more so than the policies. You know, you can't reform hatred or bigotry if it's in a person's heart, right? And I also think too that one of the best ways, well, I say that one of the best ways to reform police departments, if those that work there that are the good cops stand up to those that's the bad cops, and when they know, you know, a bunch of shit is going on, I think that will stop it. That's that what is it called, that blue wall that they like to speak on. But yet in the streets, police, or I would say DA officers, hate when people don't snitch, but yet they expect people to do that when they won't even stand on their own, when they feel like, when they know that something's going wrong within the police department. So that's just my little take on it. I'll just leave it at that. Let Saul go.
Yeah. So my take on, I guess, to policing in 2020 is, I think that when you talk about police reform, when you talk about anything dealing with police officers, I think first of all, the main thing in my opinion that's missing is that community aspect, because I think the perception of police is not where it's supposed to be. Like, for example, I don't ever hear anybody talking bad about a firefighter, right? Because when a firefighter is coming, you don't, when you hear a fire engine go by, like, your heart doesn't start beating, right? When you see them red lights behind you, you don't really start to, like, clench up or do anything like that. But in my opinion, they're both supposed to be in that same perception, right? Because they're there to serve the community the same way the firefighter is, right? Because anytime something goes wrong, you would expect to call the police, and the police will come handle the situation in a positive way. And I think that's one of the things that I've noticed is just the perception, because I had this conversation with my nephew who's 21. Asked him, and I said, so, you know, the police, like we have public servants, right? We got police, EMS, and basically firefighters. Nobody else but the police has, like, a negative perception. Nobody else but the police, you know, nobody's ever talking about defund the fire department. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's because, and I don't really even blame, like, your guy that just walks, as they call it, walks a beat. I don't blame him. I blame the system that's behind the police department, because that is how it's been set up. Because as a police officer, the sad thing, it's the same thing as the fire department. The fire department doesn't prevent fires. Just when one happens, they go put it out. And the same thing, I feel like, is the same thing happens with police officers. They don't necessarily prevent crime. It's just once a crime happened, it's their job to go put it out. But I think the interactions, the way that people perceive putting out dealing with that crime, I think that's the biggest issue that I see, because they're not viewed as equally. Because, like I said, you know, if someone's robbing the bank's been robbed, police get caught. Police are supposed to come in after the fact. And, you know, like I said, that's the reason why I say I think a lot of police officers are being put in a bad position, and it's not their fault, because like I had an idea about how to reform the police department. We can get to that in a little bit, but like I said, I have a lot of cops in my family, so I just don't believe that the police are put in a good position. The same way, both we all the three of us serve. Right? Sometimes in foreign affairs, as a military personnel, we're not put in good positions, but it's not our fault, right? If somebody asks any one of us three, hey, look, America's being attacked, will you pull up arms to defend it? We would all say yes. But then it's like when you're thrown in a random area where the people might not necessarily want you there, it's like now following orders versus being the invader. I think sometimes that's how the police are looked at, and especially like in Black communities, they're looked at being the occupying force instead of being there to assist.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Sure.
I think I definitely see Corey's view, and I think SolG, you're absolutely right in many aspects. I think the problem with police currently is trifold, and one is that, like you said, often we just respond to the call. So the crime had already occurred, we respond, and then even when officers do their best, the people already went through a traumatic experience, and when nothing comes of it, or the investigation takes several years to complete, then people lose hope in police as doing the right that they're doing the right thing, and that they're trying to help them and trying to fix this. The other thing is also, I think, is that even though there's very, very giant police departments out there, like LAPD, NYPD, LA County Sheriffs, San Diego PD, San Francisco, there's giant departments. But the majority of cities are actually kept up by very small departments. And I'm speaking from experience when I say we did not have enough people to take care of our city. Our city is fairly large in size and in people, and at any given night we had 6 to 8 officers, and that was it. So the being capable and being able to be out there and looking around and trying to prevent crimes is very limited, especially when it starts to get busy. So when we start having a lot of calls for bar fights and drunks and family disputes and domestic violence calls, and then all of the officers are tied up, and people can get very frustrated when they don't get a response for 30-40 minutes, but when they heard a noise outside and they're freaking out. And then lastly, I think that also, unfortunately, when police officers are being proactive, and my favorite experience here is one of the worst, crimes with the biggest death toll in this country is actually just driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And more people die every year due to driving under the influence of accidents than to all the other crimes combined. When officers are now being proactive and actually looking to stop these guys before they hit somebody, before they kill somebody, then we are looked at as the bad guys because we arrested them for just having a good time. And you get this, when officers are being proactive, like, what are the officers doing here? Why are they here? They're just looking for trouble. And then when we're being, just reactive, then it's like, why are you coming so late? It's almost like no matter what we do, but unfortunately, all too often is we're always on the wrong end of the, of the issue.
Corey, do you want to hop in too?
Yeah, I'll add. I mean, and I agree, and that's unfair. You get what I'm saying? It's an unfair position that police officers are viewed in that light, because I believe that overwhelming majority are good. They want to make sure that the communities are safe. They want to make sure that they're doing their job properly. It's just those ones that really which is unfair against do certain things that broad stroke the whole ideal of policing. And like I say, for me, growing up, I'm a former gangbanger, drug dealer, and all this. Not even when I wasn't out anything wrong, he saw me, snatch me up, had me on my knees, looking for whatever. And so that like you said earlier, it's a traumatic experience, or like Saul said, when you're getting pulled over, you just don't know how it's going to go. Like for example, when he mentioned about the fire department get behind, you just move out the way. That they rush into something to take care of something. And that should be the same idea with the police department. And so, that's just my take on it. I think that it can improve. I do have faith in the American people, right? That one day we can get it right, but it's all based on the ideal and the mindset that is installed inside the police officers when they're going through just their basic training before they even get fully into the force. And like you said earlier, a lot of young officers want to prove themselves, and so, once we able to do that, change the minds and hearts of those that start to come in and to understand that they are there to protect and serve, I think we can do a better job when it comes to policing, especially like I said, I can only speak from my experience in the Black community. Yep.
Now, I'm gonna say from my perspective, I got family that have been cops. I got buddies like Shariff here that have been cops. Quite a few, and I reach out to people to get their perspective on this. From my knowledge, from what I've been told, one of the first things to get cut. Now, I want to differentiate, because much of police academy training is based on paramilitary styles of training. The root structure of boot camp is based on military boot camp. That actually came, the police academy boot camp style structure came post military boot camp style structure. So they take their cues from us, but there's a difference in how all of us went through boot camp, and we transitioned to our MOS and then to our MOS training, combat training in our unit. At boot camp, you are not expected to know everything. You are expected to know a base that can be built on when you move to that next stage of training. Then for Marines, I'm not sure about you, Saul, but for Marines, if you are not a grunt, you go to MCT. If you are a grunt, you go to SOI. That's Marine Combat Training versus School of Infantry. And you get further training in the skills you are supposed to know. Then you go to the next training, which is your specialty training or MOS training. That's for military operational specialty, if I remember correctly. And then you get your specialty training, in which you get the ins and outs of everything you are supposed to know when you get to when you enter that job field. Then you get to your unit and you get more training. And literally every day that you are not doing the job, me and Muzzy were both combat side military police. We trained every day that we were not deployed. So there is constant training, and the shoot, no shoot scenario training is something that gets drilled into us like our ABCs in kindergarten. All right. And so there, and I'm not sure about you, Saul. You can chime in anytime. I'm not sure how Army training goes. Most contact with the Army that I had was at Fort Leonard Wood with y'all and some family members that are in the Army. So, and fucking with y'all on deployment. However, I just want to, like, there's a difference in how military are trained, even though the structure of boot camp is similar to military boot camp training, versus how police are training, where you get your academy and then you're supposed to show up to your unit and you're supposed to get further training, but you're literally walking on the beat and you're getting your on-the-job training, which isn't always necessarily the best training for you. And from what I've been told, the first in a budget to get cut when budget cuts come around is shoot, no shoot training, hand-to-hand training, and range time. type training, which are all the three that keep you from killing somebody. If you are comfortable hand to hand, you don't have to resort through your escalation of force as fast. If you are comfortable in your shoot no shoot training, you don't end up shooting somebody with a cell phone. You can, and there's a difference in how we train. I'm sure all three of you being veterans, or the two of you being veterans, we train so that you don't have to think when you're in a situation, so that thought isn't even a part of the process. You can instantaneously react and react properly the first time, so that you don't end up shooting an innocent person. Either one of you, Saul, I'm not sure how your, like I said, I'm not sure how your boot camp training went, and you can clue me in on any time. And then Muzzy, I'd like you to clean up any assessment I had of police training, and let's get into the actual law enforcement from that perspective, and then on the street, where I'm sure Corey has a better perspective.
Yeah, I was just gonna say real quick. In the Army, uh, I called it like we played GI Joe for like 9 weeks, right? So we got our basic infantry training, right? You know, the sleeping outside, the rucksacks, the marches, the range, throwing grenades, doing all that type of stuff, obstacle course. We did that for 9 weeks. If you're not combat arms, and I don't know if it's changed because, you know, like I said, I've been out for 12 years now. So after that, you just go straight into your training and whatever your training was. So after those first 9 weeks, I'm like, you know, we don't really shoot no more. We don't really go through all these shoot no shoots because we will support, right? So if the fight ever get to us, you know, it is what it is, but that wasn't our main engagement. Our engagement was to make sure the combat arms people were well supplied and they kept the enemy all the way up in the front where they needed to be and away from us. You know what I mean? Like that's what we do in supply. We everybody doesn't understand that. You know, when you're in the military, everybody has a role to play. You know, my role was never to be the guy kicking indoors. My role was never to be the guy on the front lines. Of course, everybody in the military is always quote unquote prepared for a defensive, but not necessarily an offensive position, right? So that would be how things were done in the Army. And I only can speak from, like I said, a support position. I can't speak from a combat arms position because that's not what it is. Number two, I think the military is a good kind of sort of a comparison, right? Because you do have your shoot and you have your non-shoot scenarios. But I feel like another issue I have with police sometimes is, and I understand, I don't look at a police officer walking the beat the same way I do in a person that's in the infantry, right? And I think that's one of the problems. People kind of, police are almost created or viewed as kind of sort of like a foot soldier, right? Like they are like the infantry of like public services. So I think the way they're trained is a little bit improper, only because I it's like I understand it to a certain degree, but if it's like if you're training a soldier, then my question is, who are the combatants, right? You could say, oh well, it's people doing illegal stuff, it's people selling drugs, it's people breaking the law, right? But at the same time, it could be a person running a stop sign, right? It could be a person with their tail light out. Like it's a completely different feel to what's going on. So I just think when we talk about, and I get that's what the military, I mean the police academy training, based on what Ace said, is supposed to be like, but I don't necessarily agree with that tactic. I believe the same way the military is specialized, the solution, in my opinion, is that we move towards specializing our police force, because everybody should not be that frontline police officer walking a beat or whatever. So that's just the way I look at it. I think we need to special.
Oh, what happened now?
Oh,
Uh-oh. All right. Go ahead and continue, Muzzy, with what you thought of my explanation and what you got out of Saul, and hopefully we can get Saul back.
Yeah. So I went, like I said, like you said, you know, we both were in the Marine Corps. I went through all the same training you had, exactly the same. And there he is, good. And I think that, in my opinion, okay, Marine Corps training was much simpler than law enforcement training. And in the boot camp aspect and in the following, you know, MCT and then MOS training, the schoolhouse training, it was not hard. But that's a two-edged sword, and here's why. So when you go through, in California at least, all right, this is post-certified training. When you go through, when you go into the police academy, you're doing this for 6 months. Marine Corps is one of the most rigorous one, and you're doing this for 3 months. So you're in the police academy for 6 months, and then you're doing this physically, and the stress factor are, you know, identical. Well, at least the physical stress factor is identical to that in the Marine Corps. And if you remember how hard and physical it was, it is, there's no difference. The difference though is knowledge. You know, in the Marine Corps, everything you had to learn was force-fed to you. It was repeated until, you know, you slept knowing it, you woke up knowing it, and you could recite it even when you were half asleep. And the police academy is not like that. You are expected to learn on your own, and you're expected to, you know, to pass all these written exams and written tests, without anybody, I mean, force feeding you the information. They give you have a class, and then you are expected to learn it, and then you have to write a test on it, on all the information. And I mean, the knowledge, just the amount of it is absolutely insane. It took me 2 moving boxes just to move all booklets and books and everything that, you know, that were given to us, and we're expected to know and learn and understand. So you are under an immense amount of stress. You have to make sure that you know all that. If you fail a test, like a major test, you have one chance to repeat it. If you don't, you're out. They kick you out. You're done. And
now, is the standard for failure the same or higher than the military? Is it 70%, or is it higher?
Much higher. Much higher. Police academy, at least in California, I can only speak for California and post, because unfortunately, across the state, there's different expectations and different academies, different ways they go by teaching, and I'm pretty sure there's also differences in you know, the certification level and you know, the passing grade and passing you know, percentages of officers. But in California, usually only 30% to 40% of academy participants graduate in the end. So it's very rigorous. It's very, very hard. And I'm telling you, you know, I went 2 weeks with 30 minutes of sleep every night. So, and then trying not to fall asleep. I mean, I was so exhausted, I would fall asleep standing up in the back of the classroom. I would get up, stand in the back of the classroom so I wouldn't fall asleep, and I would still fall asleep and almost just fall over forward, you know? And this is where I mean, it's a two-edged sword, because you come to the point where your brain just can't absorb that information anymore. You know, I managed to pass all the tests, all the major tests, and, you know, the final examinations and everything, but it was a struggle. It was a really, really, really hard struggle. The academy was. Once you get out there, you in California, you go through what's called an FTO program, which is field training officer. You're assigned 3 field training officers, and the first one just is kind of like teach you how to write paperwork. So for 3 to 4 months, I mean for the whole program is like 3 to 4 months, but for like 4 to 6 weeks at the beginning, you just taken every single paper call, and paper calls are the crimes that have occurred where the suspect is gone. So all the burglaries, you know, all the all the car thefts, vehicle thefts, phone vehicle thefts, domestic violence calls, rape calls, everything they can get their hand on, the FTO is going to make you write a paper on it. And I put in a lot of overtime during that time. I'm talking about probably 60 hours a week, which is the maximum you're allowed to in California. And then you get to your next FTO, and he teaches you how to respond to active calls. So calls that are still in progress, like a DUI, how to handle a burglary burglary in progress, how to respond to that, taking people in custody, taking them to jail and processing them, searching them, doing all that. And then your last FTO does all the proactive stuff. So at that point, you're not taking any more calls from dispatch. You are supposed to proactively find bad guys, find out which bad guys look, and how to locate like repeat offenders, what these typically look like. And it's not like race specific. It's arrested way more white guys than I ever did Hispanics. I mean, we barely have any African Americans in Orange, but it was, I think Orange consists of about 50% Hispanics, 40% white, and 10% African Americans. And the majority of people I contacted were usually drug users. Guys with repeat offenders for burglaries and just have a drug problem. And the majority of those guys are white. But it is you're expected to just go in there, find them, and arrest them. And once you're out of all of this, you have a week at the very end with your first FTO, and he just makes sure that he can sign off on everything you can, that you can handle all the calls, no matter what comes up yourself. And then you go on a 1.5 year probation. Or about a year probation. So for the next year, you're on probation. Any mistake you make, any false call, wrong use of force, any wrongful arrest, anything can get you just fired like that. And that's how rigorous California is with their officers, that the post standard. And what surprises me and what just blows my mind is when I look across the board in the United States, and that standard is much lower. You don't have the same kind of standard that you have in California for the training and education of officers than you do in other places. And you end up with officers
Go ahead and continue, Sharif. I'm gonna add in Chad. We got Chad here tonight. I'm gonna add him in. Our libertarian ambassador. Continue with your explanation, Sharif.
Yeah, so you don't have the same education and same training, the same minimal standard across the United States. So in some areas the officers are much better educated and trained than we are, because after we're out of probation, we only have to qualify on the range once every 6 months, and that's it. There's no other shooting, and every now and then we get kind of a little bit of training here and there, but that was separate from the minimum standard set by post. Like Orange City would train officers other than that in shooting and shoot and no shoot situations, but technically the minimum required is just a certification of your firearm abilities every 6 months, and that is way too low, way too low. It's so ridiculous that I would train on my own with fellow Marines every single week. Every single weekend, I would go out and we would set up shoot situations, hostage situations, everything we could, and so I can get the training that I think was necessary to do my job.
Wait a minute. Let me stop you there. There. So you had to, on your own time, do no shoot training.
Yes. Because you don't have to do it anymore. Once you're out of probation, it's just
see that?
Sorry.
Now, given the current environment and everything that's gone on, I think you spectacularly explained the rigorous training that goes on, because I know LAPD, specifically California PD, and I've looked into all their training regimens and their books and how they do things, along with the other largest PD force, which is or the other two, which would be like Texas Rangers, Texas PD, and NYPD. So I looked at all three. I looked at how they train, and I see a lot of similarities as far as the length and depth of training. As far as the no shoot training that you had to do on your own, do you see that as a problem that might have led to what we deal with now? Because as the stats go right now, violent crime nationwide is actually down. Drug crime nationwide is shooting up because of the pandemic, but was trending down prior. All crime at every level has been trending down over the past 40 years. And that's not thanks to the war on drugs, because drug crime itself has actually hit a point where it stagnated and then started to rise again multiple times, while all other crimes started to drop. Then you have police on you have what we would call bad shoots that has actually, sorry, I was throwing a dip, bad shoots that have actually that have dropped over the decades, have dropped over the past the last statistic I looked at was 60 years. They've consistently dropped since the 1960s. There was a spike in the 70s, and there was another spike in the 90s, and then they started trend downward again after that. And now we're at the point where damn near everyone that is shot unarmed by a cop, specifically black, that is shot by a cop, can be named. Like there's a movement for each one. We actually know their name. Whereas and I'm just going to say, for reference, for Hispanic, Asian, and white, Native American, or any other ethnicity, we don't have that same dynamic where we can name each person that's been shot by a cop, unarmed and without cause. All right. Even the ones with cause that were good shoots, we can still name. So I wanted to get into specifically, given what you said, you had to do training on your own. Now, you know, in the military, and I'm sure Saul understands this, they work on a keep it simple, stupid mentality, where we are going to tell you exactly how you should react to the point where you don't require thought. What you just described, having to no shoot training on your own, seems like it requires a lot of thought. And I know you have always been top notch as far as regulation and understanding. If I remember correctly, weren't you certified in 4 or 5 languages when you were active duty?
Three. Arabic, German, and English. Yeah.
Which, for anyone that should understand, Arabic is not an easy language to learn from English.
What was it? Arabic, German, and what? Okay.
Arabic, German, English.
English. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought. Okay, my bad.
Now, that dynamic of actually having to learn on your own. By the way, guys, this is Chad from Aquarian Anarchy. He is our libertarian resident, because I wanted, when we get to the solutions portion of how we start to fix and find solutions, because I don't want to talk parties, but I do want to talk solutions, and I want different perspectives. Corey is pretty liberal. I know me and you, Chad and Saul, are pretty.
Whoa! Don't put that on me. Don't put that on me like that, brother.
No. I don't mean leftist. I don't mean progressive.
Not even necessarily liberal. Not even liberal. I'm in the middle. I choose whatever sad I feel like that day.
Well, that's
Corey chooses what works.
Yeah, well,
Corey chooses what works.
Can I interject now while we're on this little mini topic? It's sort of a tangent.
Yes.
So, like, I actually think
ahead.
I think the whole like left-right thing. There are a lot of people. I'm not alone in this, obviously. But the whole like left-right and then like the middle is like a false construct. It's a construct that like is designed to create like a false dichotomy that where then you're like, oh, I'm in the middle. Like I kind of like some of the stuff on this side. So like, I kind of reject the whole left-right thing to begin with. And I think of it more in terms of like up and down, that like either like towards authoritarianism and then more towards like freedom. And so I tend to look more for where we are as far as like individual rights and the ability to be free to do whatever it is that you want to do, as long as you're not infringing on the rights of other people.
So
just pour down my little shit. Okay.
Not necessarily the American political spectrum. And just to define this, you have full-on anarchy at one end of the furthest right, the utmost physical liberty to the individual. Then you have furthest to the far left, you have authoritarianism in all of its forms. And let's go from there. And then you have the people that just glom onto anything to gain power at the top. But we're outside of parties. Sharif, go ahead and comment on that question. Do you see that as a problem for people not coming from a military background that approach things with the same mentality that you approach them? Because I know when we were active duty, you studied at a ridiculous basis, and I could have conversations with you and a select few others that honestly start to baffle the rest of the guys in our unit over a glass of whiskey.
Yeah. So I guess that's my German upbringing in Germany is just a little bit different, with a teacher as a stepmom. To that point, I think it is a problem. I think it is a problem that officers are not getting enough training with their guns, and it is visible.
Got to freeze. All right, everyone's back.
Okay. Yeah, it is a problem that officers are not getting enough training with shoot, no shoot situations, not enough training with the guns, with accuracy, not the right training. And you always luckily our department had a really, really good training officer, a training officer. He was just a very well-rounded guy. But I see it in many other departments where, just the basic necessity is enough. And many, especially very, older officers think that it's enough for me to just go shoot every 6 months. And if I qualify, I'm good. But when you look at their target, and their target looks like you shot it with a freaking shotgun from 100 yards with buckshot, and half the rounds are not even on the paper. Where are those rounds going? That's the first problem. That's the question I ask myself. You don't hit the target you intended to hit. Where are those rounds going? Well, they're going into your neighbor's house, in his neighbor's house, hitting a little kid or hitting, somebody completely unrelated, and you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. But how come you as an officer can sit there and think, oh, well, it's going to be fine? It's not. And that's why I committed myself to that kind of thing. The other problem is that there is no unarmed training. There is none. Once you're out of the police academy, there's no more unarmed training. the unarmed training necessary to just submit unwilling subjects in a more peaceful manner rather than just going straight to the gun is absolutely incredibly important, and for your own protection. You know, I got attacked and I had to wrestle with the guy, and this was nerve-wracking because what is he going for? He's going for my gun, and if he gets my gun, I'm dead. You know, luckily I didn't have to wrestle with him for too long because I had another officer that was almost on the scene. But it is scary, and you know, so as an officer, I had to spend a lot of money. I mean, just imagine I'm shooting 500 rounds of 9mm every single week, and I'm shooting about 200 to 300 rounds of AR, 5.56 every single week. That's a lot of money I'm spending. On top of that, all the money I have to spend on martial arts training, because jiu-jitsu is a godsend for police. You know, every police, in my opinion, every police officer should be trained in jiu-jitsu, because this is like the epitome of taking somebody without causing too much harm.
California actually just updated their unarmed combat standards to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If I remember correctly, it was Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu standards they just started using, which, like you just said, the better you are with your hands and your non-lethals, the less you have to use your lethal weapons. Yes,
because there's a lot of techniques I can use, you know, in close, when I'm close to the subject. You know, I don't know if you guys heard of the FBI standards, like the 21 feet. It was recently extended to 36 feet. That a guy with a knife can stab you before you can pull out your gun and return fire, and that's proven over and over and over again. That's a common standard used in courts today, that if I have a subject within that 36 feet of me and he runs at me with a knife, I can use lethal force, because he can get to me before I can use my gun. But there's ways, and we as officers can operate that way. I can't be like, you over there, just stand right there while I talk to you from way over here. That's not how this works. We're usually within very close proximity, and things like your jiu-jitsu can de-escalate situations a lot better than me trying to have to pull out my gun while he's 3 feet from me and doing something I really did not like doing. You know, this is, for me, was always a resort.
Now, I want to pivot this, now that we have a good understanding of the training that police receive. This is something where the other three individuals on this can start to chime in. As we discuss policy that leads to bad policing, policy that leads to good policing, that I see bad policy, like, for instance, back when Bloomberg was the mayor of New York City, and he had a 16-ounce limit on sodas. For police officers, when you start to force interaction, not unnecessary interaction, with the individuals and the citizenry within your jurisdiction, you end up creating an adversarial position with you and the citizenry, where you are no longer taken as a police officer that is there to enforce the law, protect and serve, and there to help the situation. You are now there as an adversary of the community, and anybody, if I'm getting pulled over 3-4 times a day for drinking a 16-ounce soda, or for smoking a cigarette and putting my butt out on the sidewalk, or for jaywalking, or any sort of
seatbelt, yeah.
And we've seen in Baltimore, where you have the police department was actually, I think it was Baltimore, Milwaukee, and a few others that were confirmed to have been using their police department as a tax arm against the citizenry by levying fines to gain revenue. when you have a situation like that, that is bad policy. That is not on the police department, who, like Shariff explained, when you are told zero tolerance, is zero tolerance, you lose your damn job. And police, even military, I'm sure the other two military guys on here can understand that is not a career field that directly transitions into any other career field except for police and security. Security paying substantially less unless you go into executive protection or celebrity protection of that sort. So forcing negative interaction with the citizenry, making an adversarial relationship, I view this as turning good cops. When you're a good cop on a beat and you think you're there for the idealistic reasons, just like a new boot in the military, you're there for idealistic reasons, and then you find out that the idealistic reasons are not necessarily why you're there, when you're actually forced to enforce things that you don't actually see as valid reasons to interact with the people around you. And when the community hates you, you will have more negative interactions with the people. And that given percentage, correct me if I'm wrong, Shariff, the amount of given percentage of bad interactions is somewhere around, like, last time I looked, around 9.8% or something like that, just under 10% of interactions you have with individuals will go bad based on just the situation itself. I see that as driving good cops into a position of becoming bad cops as they deal with more and more angry individuals based on the bad policy that forced the negative interaction and gives cover to real bad cops that should have never been on the force in the first place, which I view as a very, very small percentage, but they get more power as the bad policy gets interacted. As we roll into solutions, each one of you can chime in, add to the discussion, and what you think would be a proper solution to the scenario based on your perspective.
All right, I'll go first.
Go ahead, Corey.
I think that, I don't know if it's already a policy inside the police department, but I think that at the very least, yearly psychological evaluations need to happen. Right? I think when people come into the police force, I think that they need to see a psychiatrist and figure out why do they want to become part of the police force. Right? Because I don't get it twisted. I think it's a hard job. It's something, not necessarily because of my view of it, but because it's just a hard job to do. Like, you're dealing with unknowns every day. You know, it's like walking to somebody's house who has a dog that you never met. You don't know what that dog thinking. You know, so what you try to do is keep your distance. But I think that's something that can help because, you know, I always ask myself, even with people that join the military, and this is no knock to nobody, but like, I wonder why do they do it? For me, I can't process the thought. You know, I understand that they want to protect the country, but also too when it comes to local police officers, why are these people joining the force? Is there something in their background that they feel like they need to live up to or come head to head with? I just think those things need to be brought in, and I would, you know, like I said, once again, put in there annually psych evaluations. You know, just to make sure that you're not dealing with somebody that's in the police force that got something going on up there mentally to where they come to the community and they take it out on the community. So that's just my take on it. Like, I would say this also too. I'm not the term defund the police, right? I understand what they somewhat mean by that. Not necessarily get rid of it, right? But like you talked about earlier, Sam, how you have these big police forces like New York. New York, I think they spend over $3 billion a year on their police. You know, like, what are you doing with all this money? You know, if you're going to do that, you should have some resources going on where you can be trained properly on interaction with the public. Like, I was just in New York. This was back in, what was that? So I think I was, he dipped out again. I think it was back in June. I went to New York for the first time. And when I tell you, every time you turn your head, there's an NYPD car. Every time a police NYPD helicopter, they all on the Hudson River. I mean, they on bikes, they everywhere. And with all this money that they're allocating to the police department, why don't they have better training? Because it's been proven that the New York Police Department is one of the crookedest police departments in America. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Can I respond to that because of the mainly psychological eval stuff?
So
yeah,
when post requires a psychological evaluation before you get hired, before you even can go to the police academy. I had to undergo a psychological evaluation. Now, I would actually subjugate myself as an officer to a yearly evaluation. That's no problem, and I wouldn't see a problem with that. I think that's actually a good idea, given that we undergo a lot of stress, a lot of stress, and I can't emphasize enough. And this can wear down on you substantially, but if we do this and officers, are subjugated to these yearly evaluations, they should also, be protected in the sense that if you fail your yearly evaluation because of all the crap you've dealt with, all the little kids molestations, all the little kid rapes, all the murders, all the shootings and stuff like this, that you are protected should they let you go, in the sense that you have full retirement.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I'm all for that. But if you're just gonna drop officers because they were doing their job and they're doing it right for years and years and years and years, and now they suffer from PTSD, that would be really, really messed up.
No, I can agree with that, and you're right. They should be protected, but also too, I don't think that they should just be let go. I think that they should just get help. The best that the services that the department can provide. People go through psychological traumas all the time, and one of the things that, like, even a book on my shelf I got is called Shook Ones, and it's deal with mental health, and it's different ways that you can get that help. And I agree, like, they shouldn't be just let go. No, they should be protected, and just try to give them the best help possible. Especially if you got a $3 billion budget, damn it, you should find it somewhere in there to get them the help that they need. So that's it.
I think annual, I can't even think of the word right now. Sorry. My accident gave me a TBI, so sometimes I'm going to be hung up on words. I apologize for that. But evaluations of just the finances of any department should be a must, especially for big departments like NYPD, LAPD, just so they don't, burn through money for nonsense. Yeah. More money needs to be put into the training and like you said, mental health of officers, the correct training and the correct application of mental health. Then it can be used for, I don't know, a brand new car for the chief, or a brand new car for the mayor.
Yeah.
Where the staff just got themselves all brand new freaking cars, or they wasted millions of dollars on these stupid BMWs that nobody's driving.
I agree.
So you want
Chad?
to
go?
No.
I think you got to come deep.
Go ahead, hop in, Chad.
Okay, well, I'll go.
Yeah, now, well, when we talk about you want me to go?
Yeah, he got a delay.
All right, cool. I'm gonna go. All right, so I think there's a lot of it's bad because I should just put the cat up, but it's all good. There, when it comes to wasteful spending, like, I think, like, there are certain things that police officers don't need. Like, I've been thinking myself, like, the vehicles, for example, is one of the major things that I see a lot and kind of sort of goes around. Like, even in New York, they had, like, the smart car that you can drive through Central Park, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it might improve relations with the people because a guy's driving around a smart car, kind of looks like an Urkel car, but it's a police officer car. Yeah, they might not be as afraid of him because he's driving around this little bitty car, but to me, it's still, like, wasteful. So I think that would be the first thing. But when you want to actually talk about solutions to the problem, then I think the police needs to be reformed. And when I say restructured, I don't believe that they should have certain levels of police officers that are trained to respond to certain incidents, right? Like, for example, and I know this is an international example, but your bottom level police officers should about 75% of force. And when I say level, I'm comparing to like a police officer, and meaning you walk around with a billy club and you're not even armed at that point. You understand what I'm saying? Like, your job is to like really, like when we talk about protect and serve, that is your job. If whatever is going down is outside of what you're prepared to handle, the same way like a security guard would protect these buildings, so unarmed security guards all the time, right? That protect like these warehouses all the time, their security, but they have no guns. Like, well, what happens if a truck on up in here? Really be able to do nothing to stop. But I think it's where dealing with security. I think if we looked at the police like that, that will be a way to do it. So you would basically have a 3-tier level, and the police could use the second tier to basically kind of sort of get people to chill out. Like, if I'm on the bottom, I call them like you got green shirts, blue shirts, and red shirts, right? So the green shirts would just basically walk polo, billy club, and maybe some handcuffs, right? That's all they got. So they're the ones who are going to respond to your domestic disputes. They're going to be the ones in traffic stops doing things like that. That's what they're going to be trained to handle. So that way, if it's outside of something, they can even use negotiation like, hey, you might want to let me handle it, because if I got to call that, you know what they going to handle. You know what I mean? And then like your red shirts will be like the elite, right? Like your SWAT. They gonna be the ones kicking down doors, doing all this other stuff. So I feel like if you designate which officers could handle which type of situations, that would improve community relations. Because bottom line is, you would never have a red kicking down like like I'm gonna bring up Breonna Taylor, right? That would have never happened with just some regular cop. You would have had to be at the most elite level to get your door kicked in like that. And it would have been the equivalent of, like I said, having a SWAT team kick your door down. So if you're not on the level where a SWAT team needs to even be there, then yeah, you wouldn't even have to deal with it. So I know a lot of people might not necessarily like that, but I feel like your bottom tier police officers should be the equivalent of a like security officer. But every police officer should not be walking around with a gun, in my opinion, depending on what type of situation they're handling. Get called to got this gun right here, and I understand people say, well, what if something goes down? I get that, but at the same time, you have to be able to look at some of these and I know Britain is a different type of topic, but their officers, not all of them, they do have some that do carry guns, but the majority of the police officers do not carry guns. And I am all for them having their Second Amendment right, but I feel like until we can start to specialize the police force in a manner that the police officers should shift more into a security guard role. If you were neighborhood and you see a police officer walking down the street with some jeans and a polo on, and all these guys are billy club, I honestly don't think people in the community are gonna really be like fearing for their lives. You're not really gonna have kids like, quote unquote fearing them or whatnot. He's just gonna pretty much be like, oh, okay, if something's going down. He's almost like an upgraded neighborhood watch. So I think if we could specialize our police force, that would be a step in the right direction.
We have a question from my cousin Kenny in Houston, Texas. He says, he's an Army Ranger, old school Army, older than all of us. He says, I want to disagree, because you never know what a suspect is carrying, and the officers have to be able to protect themselves as well. As far as Saul's comment, Muzzy, feel free to comment on whether you think that the general prospect would work, the different tiers of officers, and so forth.
So just quickly to the tiers. We already have tiers. SWAT is extremely well trained, no matter what department they're in. Usually, they undergo. I mean, it's semi bi-weekly training. They jump off helicopters. They do all this stuff. You have detectives that deal with certain crimes, drug crimes, domestic crimes, whatever it is. And then you have your lowest tier, which are your beat officers, your patrol officers. To take their guns would mean a death sentence for many. And we saw an example of that just recently. I think it was in Seattle, where they wanted to defund the police, and they start sending in social workers to deal with issues. And this lady was killed by the manic, mentally disabled individual she was supposed to respond to. Any situation can turn deadly within an instant, and a billy club is not an answer to a gun or to if you're really, really well trained in martial arts, maybe to a knife, but it's never an answer to a gun. And we just have that. We have guns in our country, and the guns all of officers carry are as harsh as this sounds, are there to protect their own lives in most of the incidences. When I get to protect somebody else, it's absolutely incredible. It's amazing. But in most of the incidences, I'm dealing with one guy. And when he attacks me, it's there for me to protect myself if I feel that my life is threatened. And most of the officers shot on duty are not dangerous calls. Most of the officers killed on duty are not dangerous calls. They're stopping a car because of an expired plate. They get shot because they didn't know the guy in there is a wanted criminal or a wanted murderer, whatever it is, or just really, really pissed off that day and just lost it. So most of the officers that died within absolutely ridiculous circumstances, where they're just approaching a person because they seem like the person needs help, and that person shoots them, or that person stabs them. Most officer involved shootings within our department turn from a traffic stop. It was just a traffic stop. The guy ran a stoplight, or the guy had expired plates, or the guy just was driving down the wrong way, and it ended up, in an officer-involved shooting within our city. So to say that, to take away the guns from officers on the lowest level that deal with most of these incidences would be a death sentence, an immediate death sentence in the same situation. That's why I can't agree with that. I think officers just need more training.
Okay.
More training.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Anybody else who wants to chime in with what you believe would be a good solution?
I would like to chime in on that.
As far as policy goes.
What's that?
Go ahead, Chad.
I say even as far as policy.
Yeah. So I kind of I want to cover that too a little bit. But so to the point about, I'm going to try and do this as diplomatically as possible. Okay, so do we know the numbers of like when a random civilian stops to help someone on the side of the road, how often those people are shot and killed by the person who they're trying to help? Does that happen? Because what I'm concerned with is that, to Saul's point, that when you have an officer, when every officer is geared up and I'm not going to say it's the same on the same level as like military, like an occupying force or anything like that, but they've got quite a bit of gear on. There's a certain air of control, and in some cases intimidation, but in a lot of cases it's just like, look, I've been trained to take control of the situation so that we can, so that I can kind of manage it, and then that way I know how to go through my decision tree of how to address these things. But what I wonder about is if the problem that we have is you never know what's going to happen, and anytime you interact with somebody, they could kill you. Well, then do I get to carry a gun all the time everywhere I go?
Yeah. Second
You know,
Amendment.
no, not in New York, not in Chicago, not in Washington, D.C.
But
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, huh? Yeah, but yeah, well, all right, yeah. So, but you have places where. So I think back to the original point. I think that some of this stuff is and to Saul's point about if you had like sort of this. I know we have different tiers, but there's no tier in terms of or the tiers are very, very blurred between what SWAT looks like and what the guy who pulls you over for an expired inspection sticker looks like. I had a guy one time, I was going, I was going 38 in a 30 or something like that. Okay. And my inspection sticker was expired. It was noon on a weekday. He pulls me over and yells at me from the car to put my hands outside the vehicle. I'm like, what the? Okay, shit. Like, I don't even know what I like. I'm going 38 to 30. Like, I'm sorry I was speeding, but Jesus Christ, man. Like, it was very, it started the situation off in a very, not a very cordial way. And it was, and the other thing is too, like, I get that there's all these different, rabbit holes that sometimes some of these things, you know, if you got expired plates or you have this or whatever, it can be an indication that maybe there's some other illegal activity underlying that has been going on, and that's why you don't have that stuff, because you're either driving a stolen car or something like that. But back to Julian's point about when you have these forced interactions over things where there's no victim, there's no crime. We've created crimes that have no victims. Me driving with an expired plate is not harming anyone. So when you bring an interaction between a citizen otherwise acting peacefully and someone else who is supposed to be a peacekeeping officer, then you create this situation where now, and then I'm screamed at to put my hands outside the vehicle, and then there's all this other stuff, and then you have things like Philando Castile where he's telling the guy, you know, not in a duty to notify state, but he went ahead and notified the officer that he had a concealed carry permit and he was going to reach for the thing to show him, and he gets shot right there. And he tells him he has a gun. And so I think that to Julian's point, what we need to, and I have to preface this by saying that I'm a like radical libertarian, that I believe like that the best way to do all these things is on a more voluntary transactional basis, where this stuff should be more privatized.
You guys go ahead and continue. I'm going to be right back.
Yeah, go ahead. All right. And not so much based on the taxation system as a revenue source, where it's more of a private security that we can all kind of manage. And then we can have competing firms where if I don't like the way that this firm is conducting things, I can hire someone else to protect my house.
That's called a sheriff.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, to a certain extent it is, but
you vote him out. You don't like what he's doing, you vote him out.
Yeah, it's not quite the same. It's still the same structure, and then you're just replacing the CEO. Like, I'm talking about, like, this isn't, you know, you have one cell phone company and we just decide who the CEO of the cell phone company is. This is me saying, no, I want, you know, T-Mobile or Verizon or AT&T, or I want to buy one of these little prepaid deals or whatever. Like, we have so much more choice when you look at so many other things, and we don't have choice with this stuff. And so, but to that, to bring it back to, we're not in that type of voluntary society yet. So let's talk about how we can get closer to a more effective solution. I kind of think that doing something like what Saul said, where it's easily identifiable that this is not the person who, like, first of all, that guy's not pulling you over for an expired inspection sticker anyway. If you're worried about that kind of thing, maybe that guy calls in and says, hey, I got somebody, they're driving, this matches the description of a stolen car or whatever. Then he calls and that interaction is that. But if you just have somebody who's stranded on the side of the highway, that same guy is not going to interact with the person who's stranded on the side of the road. They are going to check and see if that person is okay. Because I've helped people on the side of the road. I've never had someone even like begin to consider starting some sort of altercation with me. Now, I'm not on the same volume level or whatever as police do, but that's why I brought up the thing about how many of those interactions happen that way, because when you have officers that the uniform is the same, the way that the footing is, it's more of a kind of an armed and ready to fight and ready to defend themselves footing, but the person in the car kind of feels on edge. It creates this tension that I don't think is necessary. And if you had something where more like what they have in Great Britain, where you have like this, that the guy on the corner is just the guy you go to ask for directions, or you go to tell him that, hey, you saw, some, homeless guy down the street or whatever, pissing on the window of the bakery or whatever, shit like that. It's a different kind of relationship that you have. It's like when you go to ask the person at Walmart, where the I don't know, capers are or some shit, instead of this. You go up to the armed security guard at Walmart and say, hey, can you help me find the capers? Well, that dude, when you come up and tap him on the shoulder, he might turn around because he doesn't know if you're going for his gun or something. It's like we're creating these interactions with people who are thinking like, shit, like I'm here, I'm defending my own life. And if somebody tries to touch me, I don't know if they're trying to take my gun and kill me with it, or if they're just trying to get my attention. We've seen some of these people where you have like a guy who is deaf, can't understand, gets shot because he won't stop moving. There's all these kinds of things where it's like, why are we creating this environment? Because we don't have a tiered system like what Saul was talking about that is easily definable, and we don't have anyone who's not armed and ready to potentially fight and issue lethal force to protect themselves. But then on the policy side, why are we creating laws that force interactions over nonviolent offenses against laws that were just created to generate revenue?
Now that we're getting into policy, I just want to go into there's the dynamic right there. Mm-hmm. When you approach a suspect, Sharif is in uniform with a badge, armed for whatever he may have to encounter at the moment. Like the military, like any cop anywhere in the country, you do not walk up to a situation. I'm not going on a mission hoping that I won't encounter an armed person. I'm going on a mission ready for the armed person that may very well be there waiting for me. Now, I want to say when you're being stopped, when you're being pulled over, whatever, knowing that most officers are shot or injured by a person they did not expect to encounter at that moment, as Sharif laid out earlier, there is a point where the badge itself elicits a negative response. And like you said, Chad, bad policy creates a situation where that badge is now associated with a negative response. So as we get into a policy description, Sharif, go ahead and you can respond to what Chad said. However, as we shift into policy, I just want to throw out there, Sharif, you had combat training. I got my pistol with me right now. It's empty. Chamber's empty. Magazine is out. Nobody on fucking Media Matters or fucking psychos can bitch about it. All right. Sharif, I'm just going to go right here. I'm going to put my headphones down. Raise your hand at the point where if you told me to take my hand, to take the weapon out and drop the weapon, if you would have shot me or if I gestured wrong in any way. All right? We've done this. You know how this goes.
Okay, so in this
Yeah, you
instance,
got shot.
in this
Now,
instance,
I'm assuming because you did not raise your hand at any point that you would not have shot me. So I'm going to assume that based on my experience, having dealt with no-shoot scenarios, being from a family that understands law enforcement and having my own background and this type of shit, having made arrests and handed people over to agencies and stuff, that I would have grabbed for my weapon differently than the average person who I deem to be wholly ignorant of how to hold a firearm, grasp a firearm, reach for a firearm, and how to cooperate with a law enforcement officer's request when given properly. Correct?
yeah,
Now, all those are dynamics that play into it.
absolutely.
So you would not have shot me at that moment. Now, I deem you, personal experience, to be pretty fucking on point, as I've said before, and very reasonable and educated. Obviously, speaking 3 languages, you can't be a fucking idiot. So, do you think it likely that the average person would have reached for their gun, hand not on the, or finger not on the trigger, hand not ready to fire, not accidentally gestured towards the camera or towards the police officer, and placed it down, pulled it out, and placed it away from their body and down on the ground?
Hold on real quick, Shariff. Would you have shot me?
No.
And the reason I'm asking that, only reason I'm asking that because, like, which I love the example, but it's a preconceived notion that you know this person, you know, he's giving a demonstration. But first time ever seeing me, you know, first time ever seeing me, same scenario, you know, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Honestly, swear to God.
Okay.
Swear to God. And the reason why I'm gonna get into this right now.
Well, hold on. Let me do the same scenario because his was a little, you know, his was little. Okay. Here's mine. 4.5.
Oh, don't tell me you're gonna pull out a 1911. Oh, he pulled out a 1911.
I pulled mine out. You see this big boy. You know, you see it's nighttime. You see the little shiny. You know it. You wouldn't have shot me.
If
Great. Now it's a measuring contest.
Can I get into this?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
here's my problem with the example. But if you would have, first of all, I want to answer your question. If you would have pulled the gun out the same way he did, in the same mannerism, looking away from me, you know, with an offhand, kind of holding it awkwardly, I would have not shot you. But that's based on my training and my experience and my level of expertise in shooting myself. Because I know I could have outdrawn both of you should you have turned around and tried shooting at me. Just because the amount of training and shooting I do. Okay? And that's for me personally. I can't speak for any other officer in that instance, but that's why we get training, and that's why I personally would have never even let you grab your gun. Yeah, none of you. I would have told you to just keep your hands up, put them behind your back. You're not under arrest. I just want to remove the gun so we don't get into trouble. And I would come up to you. I would hold your hands firmly. It might feel a little bit awkward or aggressive to you, but I would remove the gun, lay it to the side where another officer is watching it, and then we can talk normally between each other. That's how I would have had the situation.
That is something that is not done by most departments.
No,
and I've seen this play out. Most cops don't have the balls to even get within arm's reach of you when you have a gun or you're armed in any way, shape, or form.
There's a lot of screaming usually.
Yeah, you have an unpaired. This is why I wanted to have you on. You have different experience than the average officer. You are not only a combat vet, but you are also an officer, and I know you are highly educated. This is why I know you analyze the situation equally or more than myself. That's why I want to have you on. The fact is, you know, even the young guys that came to our unit, even the boots that we interacted with, and I'm sure in law enforcement you dealt with the same thing, young guys that didn't know what they were doing, that probably would have reacted differently than yourself.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So that's where I want to say there is a changing dynamic in not only how police officers react based on a lack of training, lack of funding for good training, and lack of experience with good training. Like you just heard, Shariff had to take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on himself. He had to do shoot, no shoot training by himself. He had to do his range time by himself. That takes a lot. And as he already previously said, there are plenty of guys who are perfectly happy with passing their yearly certification and moving on. I can't even say that the dynamics are even that much different than the military. There are plenty of guys who work out on their own and guys who are perfectly happy to show up at PFT day and just barely pass. All right. And depending on whether I was drinking on Friday night and Saturday and Sunday might very well depend on which guy I happen to be on Monday during the PFT test. All right. So I'm not even going to say that
training of what about, because what I was noticing, it seemed like you're kind of at an unfair advantage to like the normal citizen because of your training when you're showing him, like, if I go and I approach my weapon this way and I put it down on the ground this way, like, people don't know that. People don't know. And so that's why, like, to your point, you'd have to
there's a disconnect.
You'd have to kind of take that whole part of the process out of the citizen's hand, where they don't have the opportunity really to reach for their weapon, because then it creates that potential for something to go awry.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where, clear voice commands and a clear presence, it becomes very important. When I give people commands, I want them to be very small, very short, very clear, and in a non-threatening but still authoritarian way. Okay, so they don't think it's all fun and games and they can do whatever they want. I want to de-escalate every situation I get to. Every time I want to get this back into the green. That's my main goal as a police officer. If it's in the green, I'm green. I'm happy. We're talking, we're laughing, we're giggling, whatever it is. Right. But if it's in the yellow or red, I want to bring it down back to the green. And different situations require different, a different way of thinking. But if I can,
I want to stop you. I want to stop you for just a moment. Explain the green to black dynamic for people who are not combat or law enforcement oriented, because I think we may lose viewers there when they don't understand. I mean, obviously, green should sound pretty self-explanatory, but explain the levels real quick while we can.
Okay, so you have levels in the military and in the police ranging from white to black. White, green, yellow, red, black. So white, a person in a white condition is just completely, oblivious to whatever is going on around him. He does not have any awareness of what's happening. And imagine a cop taking a nap in his cop car. That would be white. Green is a calm situation where there's no threat, there's nothing you have to worry about, and but there's still a minimal, there's still situational awareness of what's happening around you, but you are not escalating anything. It's really like two friends talking on the street, but still paying attention to road cars, whatever it might come along, right? A stray dog, whatever it is. Yellow, you're already in heightened awareness. Okay, so I go there's a car stop or whatever. I approach the guy, and he's acting suspicious. Now he didn't give me any reason to pull out my gun or anything to escalate the situation. He's not being aggressive or nothing. It's just something sounds fishy. So I'm really, really paying attention to what he's doing, to what I'm doing, where I'm standing, and what's going on. Right? And when you're in the red, you're there. You're pulling out your gun. You end up getting ready for that firefight, or you already get into the firefight. Right? Whether it's military or police, you're responding to a threat, to an immediate threat. And then black, it's when you're getting shot at and you just completely lose it. and you're going into the fetal position, and you don't know what the heck is going on in the world around you, and you're ready to die. So those are the threat levels. And that's what I was referring to earlier. So I want every as a police officer in the military, I want to be in that yellow area. Okay, when I'm overseas in Afghanistan, I'm always in that yellow area. If I might go to red if something happens, but I want to go back down into that yellow. I never go into the green, into the white, or into the black. It's a constant back and forth between yellow and red. As a police officer, it's not the case because we're dealing with Americans. You know, some are, the majority of them are good people. Just forgot to update their registration, or didn't pay attention to the red light. You know, their kid in the back and they got scared and drove through the red light, or whatever it is. Most of the incidences I deal with, probably about 95%, had nothing to do with any criminal intent. And that's how it ended, in the green. I started in the green. Hey, what's going on? You just blew the red light, man. Oh, I'm sorry, officer. A kid started choking or something. I wanted to pull over real quick. That's the only way I could get to it. All right, man, your kid is good? Oh, yeah. Spit it out. It's all good. All right, man, you have a good day. It doesn't warrant a ticket. It doesn't warrant anything, I randomly, if ever, gave a ticket to anybody for vehicle violations. And even if it is a yellow incident, okay, like let's say I'm talking to a CCW owner, he says, I don't have proof of it yet. I don't know. I don't have evidence of it yet. He says he's the CCW owner. Then I'm in the yellow. I want to bring it down to the green. That means I'm telling him, hey, man, I know this is not an arrest. I'm not arresting you. You're not in trouble. I just want to get that gun out of the situation so I can calm down and we can talk normally. Is that okay with you? Yes. All right. I take the gun out. I look at the CCW permit. After we're done talking, just grab your gun and you're on your way. And that's how these incidents, and I had multiple incidences like this, even in California, where we were able to de-escalate the situation in a very similar manner. Or he had a knife on him. Almost every guy in this world has a knife on him. Hey, do you mind if I just take that knife out myself, put it over on the curb? After we're done talking, you can go grab it. Yeah, sure. I don't search him. I don't do anything. I just grab that knife, put it on the sidewalk, and after we're done talking, he goes about his way. And this is a main part of training, not just like law training in law, understanding the laws that you're enforcing, training with dealing with mentally unhealthy people, some people who are suffering from schizophrenia. I mean, I had a guy I would visit weekly because he just bonded with me and he suffered from schizophrenia. This guy would go on absolute manic trips, scaring the crap out of people. Every time I showed up, he would calm down, we would talk, and he would go back home and take his meds and be good. So Post requires training in mental health recognition, the recognition of people who are deaf or blind or whatever, and how to deal with them properly and de-escalate situations to calm down. This is not an requirement across the United States, and it has to be. It has to be a requirement across the United States because it doesn't matter. Yes, do some people get more scared because there's an officer showing up? Yeah, but that's why I have to stay cool. I have to be funny or whatever to calm down the situation. If every officer acted like this, we would have situations similar to Berlin or to Germany. All right, you were talking about Chad. You were talking about England, where some of these officers only have a club and not that
Bobbies or whatever they call them. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have the same situation in Germany. Officers are very calmly approached. They approach people very calmly. People don't fear police there, but they carry guns. All of them carry guns. There's not one officer that doesn't carry a gun in Germany. So the dynamic is not the gun. The dynamic is obviously the approach by officers. And unfortunately, in the United States, officers are getting not enough training and not enough supervision in the sense that, hey man, you need to de-escalate the situation. It's on you to calm this thing down. It's on you not to be an a-hole or a butt to somebody for no freaking reason. You don't know what the guy you stopped just went through. You don't know if you had a shitty year.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to say, because you were talking about, like, you know, with the psych evaluations for the officers, you know, and you don't want to get them, you don't want to just have somebody lose their job because they have PTSD because of the stress and everything. Well, shit, like you got guys who are, you know, they're and sometimes it's, you know, oh damn man, I got a dime bag in the glove box or something like that, and so now I know that like this is going to turn into something. If he searches my car, you know, you know, and he's got a strike or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's all this sort of stuff that like feeds into that situation. But ultimately, like having a bag of some, you know, a plant, you know, in your car, it should not be the kind of thing that ends up leading to that sort of thing. But because of the drug war, we've gotten into those kinds of situations.
And here's where the problem lies.
Hold on real quick, y'all. Hey, let me do this right. I had to dip because this little one over here wants to eat. She wants to eat, and I'm on daddy duties. My wife is out of town.
Hey,
me and her.
How you doing, hun?
They say hello.
Hi, I can hear them.
Oh, you can hear them?
Oh,
okay.
All right.
Okay. But let me go. Listen, man, I enjoyed my time.
Hair braided?
That's me trying to do something with it because her mother's out of town. Not good.
Beautiful girl, beautiful daughter.
I'm not good at it.
We all got kids. We understand.
Yeah, so listen, like once again, anytime, H, just let me know, all right? And I'm back. And once again, Sam, I appreciate everything, man, the information you giving me, because I learned a lot of new shit today. I ain't gonna lie to you. I usually pull out my smart book when Chad get it talking, but this is some other shit.
No doubt.
But listen, I'll be sure to tweet and everything.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, we're definitely
It's good seeing the view from a different perspective. You know, that's how you learn, dude. And
We're-
that's how you come to an agreement.
Well, in short, I mean, just how we bring
definitely gonna have you back in.
we communicate. You know, we bring forth ideas and we put them in a pot and we mix them up, and then that's how we bring forth a good solution, in my opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
We're
Guys, I
definitely
appreciate
gonna
you.
have you back on.
See you, Corey.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're
Just
definitely
let me
gonna
know.
have you back on to talk about your excommunicado and all that stuff, and your next move, because you didn't get to drop your corrected felon podcast before YouTube gave y'all the chop. So
No.
I'm gonna have y'all on talk about that.
Well, I'm gonna let it out real quick, which I am about to kick it back up, but not on YouTube. So you get the
I'll be right back.
exclusive right here. It's gonna be all just audio, because we're not messing with YouTube. Yeah, no, we don't. So, but no, I am going next week. That's my plan. Next week is to drop the audio of it. So,
Awesome.
but appreciate you. Hit me up anytime, man.
All right, peace, Corey.
All right, thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear what
So-
Shariff has to say on this other thing, because I liked where it was going. So I want to.
I think this next segment, as we talk solutions, I think, Chad, between me and you, even though Saul and Corey couldn't stay here with us to the end, I know they got shit going on. I wanted to get into solutions because I see a way to solve this, and unfortunately,
Sorry.
defunding the police. Defunding the police is not an option that I see as valid for fixing the lack of training of new officers coming on the force, the shoot no shoot training, and hand-to-hand training, because I know from the military perspective, hand-to-hand training did not occur enough. I'm sure Shariff could admit this, that, oh, hey, how you doing, princess?
Good.
Oh my God, I have not seen a picture of you since you were a baby.
She was at her auntie, came back. So
There we go. However, I wanted to get into shoot no shoot training is expensive. I know I would charge a hefty amount to teach an entire police department for shoot no shoot training, offhand shooting, shooting while having a victim, all sorts of stuff for one day, let alone 5 days, which would be necessary to teach it properly at a point where the individual could understand and retain that information on a daily basis and practice it themselves. And I know for hand-to-hand, that requires, for actual martial arts practitioners like myself, that requires 3 to 4 days a week, every week, for at least 6 to 60 weeks. 6 to 60 weeks. And I say 6, that is boxers, MMA fighters that literally train this shit 8 to 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day, and they live that lifestyle. For the Taibo boxing, kickboxing, I go to the gym on a daily basis, or I go and do a class every day. That would be like 60 weeks to get to a point where you are proficient enough to be able to handle yourself in a hand-to-hand situation and not have to draw a gun or a escalate force in that level. So I know that is extremely expensive. It is not cheap. It is far cheaper to have you sit down at a computer and do a EO class, equal opportunity class, or sensitivity training or something like that, that we already have downloaded from 5 years ago than it is for me to have you do martial arts training. So as we get into solutions,
so you're saying that's what they do, is it just kind of becomes the path of least resistance. Like, this is easy, it's cheap, it just go watch this thing, and then that's it.
It's a money thing. Money guides everything. And I know when it comes to training, even the military works like this. There is a sweet spot between going over your budget to where people start to audit your budget, and there's a sweet spot between going under your budget where your budget gets cut for the following year. So I'm sure Sharif figured this out, or has done this when we had range days where we have to make ammo disappear, or at the end of the range day, we just stand there like Rambo and we dump off ammo as we fire into a target that none of us are hitting after firing 300, 400, 500 rounds of a belt into a friggin' target. We're just having a good time, but we have to, because our budget is going to get cut at the end of the year if we don't expend that ammo. I won't go into how we get rid of the rest of the ammo that we don't expend at the actual range. However, Sharif knows what I'm talking about in the bushes of Camp Pilgrim.
Bush monster.
But yeah, there is a money guiding to everything. And there's also there's the pension thing. If you start to be too good at your job, like any other union, there's a sweet spot where if you're too good at your job, cuts start to be made because you're too efficient. If you're not good enough at your job, then cuts start to be made because you're inefficient. So let's get into solutions.
Yeah, from like, okay, I want to get into this, and it's unfortunate. So the first problem we have is that we have just absolutely horrendous laws that are different from state to state, and that need to be fixed for officers to be able to do their job, and like in a manner that shows support to the public. Because if we're just out there, zero tolerance policy on drugs, zero tolerance policy on seatbelts, zero tolerance policy on this, and we're just out there collecting taxes and tax revenue for the city, for the county, for the state, it doesn't matter. That's where you lose a lot of the effectiveness of police public interactions. And that's a bad thing. And then the other thing is, you have local policies. I just got lucky with my department. My department is badass with policies. For example, the whole Ferguson thing, how he was like kneeling on his neck. That's a big no-no in our department. You do not kneel on anybody's neck. That's a big no-no in the whole entire state of California, actually. And it's taught to you by post. You do not kneel on your neck. that does not go, you kneel on the back, on his back. It's very similar to a jujitsu move when you're about to set up for an armbar or whatever, and the other problem is that these policies just lead to bad policing, especially when officers can use these policies, officers that just do not care anymore. They're either okay, I will do that. Bad policies that give officers more power than they should have, or bad policies that constrict officers in their ability to conduct things safely. So when I have a policy that requires me, our sergeant that says we have a 0 tolerance, and if you don't do that, I'm gonna give you a day off, or 2 days off, or a week off, and I have to go out and I have to cite people for stupid seatbelt or whatever violations, or the insurance, whatever it is. I mean, there's importance in these laws. Wear seatbelt, you might die if you get a hit, but it just ruins my relationship with the public. And that was very important for me personally. And I know a lot of police officers in my department, that did very, very well with the public, and usually would be requested, like, is Officer Muzayen working today? I'd rather talk to him. Is, is Officer so-and-so working today? I'd rather talk to him. Or, he took my case and I really, I'm really confident with this officer. So you have the possibility to build up good relationships. Sometimes you have to just ignore certain policies, if they negatively affect your relationship with the public, like 0 tolerance. Some 0 tolerance policies, are just ridiculous. Like,
does that get you into trouble though if you don't enforce something that's like, to what extent? I guess it depends on what you're required to enforce and what you can kind of like get away with letting it slide.
Well, of course I can't let slide any felonies, right? Like any felony violations, I can't let slide. Misdemeanors, it really depends, on what misdemeanor it is. I never let a DUI slide. I don't do that. And it doesn't matter if you're a police officer, if you're a civilian, if you're the mayor, I didn't care. I got you for that. If you're under the influence, then I'm going to arrest you and I'm going to cite you. And if you have multiples, you're gonna go to jail. So, but there's other misdemeanors where I'm like, okay, like city municipal misdemeanors, like you can't freaking camp in the park. Then I go to the homeless person and I ask him, hey man, let me see your driver's license. If he has no warrants, no nothing, because he's violating the law, I can't ask him for his his CDL or whatever. Then I just ask him, hey man, we have multiple calls. I unfortunately have to ask you just to leave from the spot. I wouldn't cite him for it. It makes no sense, because this same guy that I'm not citing today might be the guy that was sleeping on the side of the road and saw one person shoot the other. And if I have a bad communication with him over stupid stuff like this, then no report, then he's not going to come to me and tell me what happened.
He might help you solve an actual crime. Yeah.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely. And that's how I look at it in every aspect of my work. If I didn't have to do anything criminally to a person who is completely, it's not a repeat offender, it's just a normal person, normal civilian, I didn't do it. And you just build, I mean, that's the reason why I got constant call, well, not constant, but I got calls quite often that says, hey, I really loved Officer Muzayen. His work was good. He's a great officer or whatever. Or some letters that came to me and be like, I really appreciate what you did for us and our family. Because that's how every officer should look at his job. It is more than a job. You are there for the people. You're not there for the law. You're there for the people first. And if
laws can be unconstitutional, laws can be unjust. However, and that is basically decide on whether or not this is one thing that when we were active duty got pounded into us, a lawful order versus an unlawful order. An unlawful order we do not have to follow, and yeah, we may end up standing in front of some brass later. A lawful order, we will be backed to the nines, hopefully, if the people above us have the integrity. Something Aquarian Anarchy, Chad's kinfolk, put unfortunately many members of the military who come back from combat enter law and law enforcement and do not make the adjustment and still function as if the people are our enemy. And I'm gonna go scroll down to a minute because he made a couple. Another issue is fear. Another issue is fear. The people don't see police as protectors but oppressors. Red, white, and blue means freedom until they appear in your rearview mirror. Aquarian Anarchy, for anyone that is not in the loop, is a fantastic podcast. You would be radically surprised by what you find there. It is not. We got a couple anarchists up here in New Hampshire, a couple libertarian or anarcho-libertarian guys, great guys, old school spec ops guys that just saw a whole lot behind the curtain. As far as I'll go with that, based on the stories that I got from them. I think he mentions a solid dynamic where we, and this pertains to me and you, Shariff, we come back into society. We're not necessarily welcomed into society, and the only place that we readily fit into is law enforcement and security apparatus in some way, shape, or form. Did you see, when you were in law enforcement, that dynamic play out in both a positive fashion and negative fashion?
So we had a lot of the departments in in Orange County and in San Diego County actually did not like to hire veterans because of issues that can arise because of PTSD and the problems you just mentioned. Yes, they can absolutely become an issue as a police officer when everybody is just a bad guy, and you're treating everybody as a bad guy, and that becomes clear the more you've been in contact in firefights overseas. The more you've seen your buddies pass away, on your side, and then just disappear from your life, or come back and they continue to disappear because they can't deal with what they have been through. It tears away your soul. It tears away your happiness and just your ability to function in a just nice way to other people. And but in our department we had a lot of vets. Air Force vets, Army vets, Marine vets. I was one of the Marine vets, and our department actually liked this. But like I said, we underwent psychological evaluation, before we got hired, and an extensive, very, very extensive background investigation that included, just included neighbors. They would go around and ask neighbors, how is he behaving? Do you see him screaming? Do you hear him yelling? Do you what? And all of that plays in. So the veterans at our department were mostly, actually, I don't even know of one that was an a-hole in public. The guys were very exceptionally nice, and usually, I don't even know of any veteran that's been in a shoot no shoot situation. In a situation, yes, but where he actually had to shoot. So in an officer involved shooting incident, because we tend to be able to de-escalate the situation a lot better, because we don't see this threat at the same level as some of these kids that are coming out of college. right? I'm coming out of college. I've never been in combat. I've never seen a real threat. And then somebody, is trying to pull out the gun, and no matter you did, that gun is going to come out of that holster on the police officer side too, And
so you're saying that sometimes that military background can actually like prepare you better if you don't have some of the other issues that underlie some of the PTSD and other things, and kind of that constant awareness, but that actually like seeing real threats helps you better to delineate real threats from the ones that because if you've never seen it, you can't tell a real from a perceived threat.
No.
I'll hop in on this. I personally, I'm good with a knife. Hand to hand is my thing. When it comes to hand to hand, a person with a knife, and in my experience doing DoD security and casino and nightclub security and executive protection, stuff like that, a guy with a knife does not threaten me the way a guy with a gun does. And I am more likely to go hand to hand with that guy than I am a guy with a gun on a regular basis. And I more often than not don't feel the need to reach for that next escalation in force. But that's because I have the hand-to-hand background. That's because I'm proficient in that level. And like Shariff just said, I don't see that threat on the same level that a guy that is just coming out of police academy that got a criminal justice degree or a business degree or a psychological degree. Because from what I've seen, the most desired degrees are business, psychological, and criminal justice degrees for any police department or law enforcement background. Business doesn't seem to necessarily translate. Psychological, I can completely understand that. Understanding the dynamics of how people think and react to situations, specifically behavioral psychology, I completely understand that. However, in criminal justice, it seems to be completely relevant. It misses a lot as far as practical application. However, as far as the text of the law, it is worthwhile going into law enforcement if you plan on doing nothing else but law enforcement. Shariff, one of our boys, hopped on. Harvard said, I think a big thing that needs to be changed is revisiting the psych evals, or like every 3 years a new psych evaluation, because an officer went in with a right headspace doesn't mean it's maintained. It's a maintained headspace. So you can go in with a right mindset and you may encounter things throughout your time in
the stress that he was talking about, that you encounter that stuff, and then it starts. I mean, we all know, we've seen it. Like even if you get like just a regular job, like I remember when I was a kid, there's this grocery store in our neighborhood that I went to all the time. I went to work there. I never looked at that place the same way. Like I even like walking in, everything looked different, because if you've been behind and you've pulled stuff out of the warehouse and stocked the shelves and you've worked the cash register, it doesn't look the same way anymore. Like and so like as you go through these processes and you have all these interactions, well, that starts to shape like how you expect each one of those builds on the next one. It starts to shape how you approach the next interaction. And so to that point about like, and like what Corey said, not necessarily saying we've got to fire fire everybody who has a psych eval that looks like it's going in the wrong direction, but get them the help that they need to improve that situation, so that you don't end up, because what happens is that from the civilian side of things, being on the other side on the other side of law enforcement, I don't get that same like, well, we're not gonna do anything because this guy's got he's going through some PTSD right now. No, you'll get in just as much trouble if you mouth off to the cop or something else goes wrong, and so like keeping those guys unhelped, but in law enforcement is not healthy for those interactions. But just firing someone, well, I mean, now you've got all this other, especially if it's like what Julian was talking about, where you, or maybe it was you, about how when you come back from either overseas duty or anything else, the reception that you get kind of leads you to law enforcement. Well, if you take that away, then we've already got a problem, a huge problem with veteran suicide. We don't need to exacerbate that problem with that sort of thing where you have people who don't really have an outlet. But I guess I'm wondering. So, like, as we go through this idea of, because I just have to push back a little bit, and I want y'all to kind of help me understand. So if I'm a civilian and I've got a weapon, concealed carry or anything like that, why is it that it's okay and it's normal for me to be disarmed in a situation that I could still die in, but it's not okay for the officer to disarm himself in that same situation? And why is there a higher value placed on the life of the officer versus the civilian who might also feel a potential to be threatened, that his life might be in danger?
I'm going to chime in and say the responsibility is different. If you are in a situation where somebody's on the side of the road, needs help with a tire or whatever, and you're dealing with your fellow citizen, you not wearing a uniform do not have the authority of the state behind you. You do not have the authority to help that person in a way that a civilian cannot. You also do not have the force of law behind you. You don't have the ability to take another's life in protection of the individual you're interacting with. So the responsibility of law enforcement officers is drastically different than the responsibility of an individual. And I mean, we'd have to go back to the 1820s, 1830s to decipher that responsibility of the individual and the responsibility of the law enforcement officer. I'm more than okay with going back that far if you guys really want to go back that far. However, the responsibility is different, which means the tools that are required to carry out that responsibility are far different. If, for instance, you interacted with a civilian,
I'm talking about when I'm in an interaction with an officer. Like, I'm in an interaction with an officer. I have to be disarmed, and then I'm at a severe disadvantage.
Can I get to that?
You don't have to be disarmed. You don't have to be disarmed.
Well,
I say this all the time.
Speaking, you are. It's not. It's.
Well,
it's not.
I say this. I'm in New Hampshire. If conservatism was held principally throughout all 50 states, the same as is New Hampshire, we are a very live free or die state, and I mean that very literally. In some elections, when a social issue takes the top of the ballot, the top of the issues ballot, a Democrat gets elected because they're better at that. When it comes to a fiscal or law enforcement or legal issue, conservatives get elected, especially when it comes to national security. Okay. And we flip-flop like that because that balance keeps, to be honest, whether people realize or not, that balance keeps conservatism, which when the country was founded was called modern liberalism, the full enfranchisement of the individual, the liberal lifestyle of the individual. That took place back then, and we sort of embody that. We have issues we still need to work out. We're not perfect like every other state. However, when I get pulled over, and I get pulled over often, I happen to work odd hours, and I drive through Massachusetts a lot. Most of the issues I deal with are in Massachusetts, not New Hampshire, because live free or die, New Hampshire cops really don't give a shit what the fuck I do, as long as I'm not causing a problem. I mean, I don't think I've ever been pulled over for a speeding ticket in New Hampshire or tail light or any sort of infraction like that, because we don't really like to infringe upon people's everyday rights up here. However, driving through Massachusetts, I got pulled over for driving in the far left lane, driving into work at 2 o'clock in the morning to go work a 12-hour shift on base because somebody called out of work. And I'm just going to say I got pulled over for driving in the wrong...
In the HOV lane? Was that where okay.
Oh, no. We don't even have an HOV.
Oh, it's not even HOV lane. It's just you were driving in the left lane and...
It was the passing lane.
You're one of those.
Passing lane.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, so Marcus, the guy, the Aquarian Anarchy...
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Marcus got pulled over... Yeah, Marcus got pulled over in Indianapolis. I think it was in Indianapolis, somewhere in Indiana on the interstate for going the speed limit. They told him he was going too slow. And he said, whoa, I'm going the speed limit. If I'm going over the speed limit, can you give me a ticket for going over the speed limit? Yes. So then what speed should I drive? If I'm driving too slow...
But I can drive with the rate of traffic. If you are impeding traffic in any way, you can receive a ticket. If you are driving reckless and you are endangering your fellow man, you can receive a ticket.
If the speed limit is 60,
is exactly my.
If the speed limit is 60, then why are you giving a ticket to the guy who's driving the speed limit?
Let me talk about that issue one. The problem with that is like you said, is that yes, when you impede traffic, you can be cited. When you drive over the speed limit, you can be cited. Technically, both are violations and both can oppose each other. But what we see as officers often is somebody, driving the speed limit in the passing lane. So he's traffic is building up behind him. Nobody can pass because in the middle lane and in the slow lane, everybody is driving the speed limit also. So now you have an issue that can cause an accident and can cause injury or death, because when somebody's flying down the street because he's violating the law and driving way too fast and he can't slow down because of all the traffic buildup and he collides, it's his fault and it's your fault for slowing down traffic. But there is also, it is at that point up to the officer, what to do. Is that guy being belligerent when he's slowing down traffic? Is he just like, I'm driving the speed limit, so you can screw yourself? Or, is he wanting to pass, but he saw a cop and then he got scared and is driving the speed limit now? So what is actually going on? And that's where it's very important to be cool and collective and talking to the guy and figure out what's going on.
Officer to de-escalate the situation. Yeah, but you see the problem though, right? Like what we're talking about is being considered in violation of the law by not violating the law.
No, you are.
No, you're not. No, you're not, because the people who are violating the law are the people who are driving past the speed limit. If the law is the speed limit is the speed limit, that's the limit. So then
wrong. So you're talking contradictory laws. So in New Hampshire and in Massachusetts,
technically, there's like a minimum speed limit.
We have a minimum
speed and then there's a maximum speed, right?
Yes, we have a minimum speed limit, which you have to be at to get on the highway, which nobody follows. And then we have to have a maximum speed limit law, but then we have a rate of traffic law. If you are impeding the rate of traffic, if you are impeding the rate of traffic, meaning you are weaving in and out of cars, which in California, I know Shariff has seen this, when we used to go down to the gas lamp to drink and shit, you could be anywhere between 70 miles an hour to 85 miles an hour and be completely fine.
So let me ask you this then.
The speed limit on the 5 was 65. However, you get to 89, 90, 95, 120. I'm not gonna divulge whether or not we hit 120 on the 5 in California. However, I will say that we would occasionally see a car weaving in and out of traffic going excess of 100 miles an hour, and that's the guy to get pulled over. We would see street races on the 5, and that's the guy to get pulled over. We would see the guy that is causing an accident by going 65 while everyone else is driving 85, which is about average when you get to the San Diego 5 section, the 5-805 split and everything. You get 85 is like a good common number where everyone's driving that fast. You get to 405 in LA, I mean, fuck, everyone's driving 35 because it's constant.
You can't go any faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It's physically impossible. No, so that was actually gonna be my question. Like, all right, so then if everybody's going 95 and I'm going 85, I'm still like more in you're gonna ticket me for going too slow instead of the people who are going but
if you are doing, let's say it's a 3-lane highway, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a lane and you're in the middle lane, and you're about to pass somebody, and you're doing, let's say everybody's driving 70, and you pull over into the left lane doing 75 passing, okay? And you had cars coming up behind you at 85 or 95 miles an hour, you're also at fault.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
You also
I'm required to either speed or get in the middle lane.
Well, technically,
you're required to stay with the rest of traffic.
Yes.
Okay.
So in most highways, in most states, you are allowed to speed, 10, 15 miles an hour over the speed limit to pass on the far left lane. When you pass, you veer back over into the number 2 lane, the center lane, and drive your regular speed limit again. But it should be only a short frame of time. So if a police officer sees somebody coming up, speeding up to 85, going around him and slowing back down, that's completely legal. But if you're going over to the left lane because you're doing 70 and the guy is doing 69, and you're like hanging on each other for like 10 miles and there's guys lining up behind you, then you're impeding traffic, and that's a no-no.
Now, I'm just going to say, when I was in California, when I was in Cali, I had a Chevelle when I first got out there, because while everyone else, I'm going to tout on how awesome I am. Everyone else bought a 25% interest car loan on the brand new muscle cars that had just come out that year. I bought a 73. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sharif knows what I'm talking about. Right out in Oceanside. But I bought a 73 Chevelle Malibu, and I would drive in a fast lane. Now, up here in driving through Massachusetts, which I'm right on the New Hampshire-Massachusetts border, I do it every damn day at about 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, every damn day. I'm not going to lie and say that I don't play the military card, because I play that very, very well. I actually have my MP badge hanging from my fucking rear view mirror, just because it's got Paul and Dumas and Verbeek's shit hanging from it. So, but I will say, when I'm driving down the road, I get pulled over from time to time for driving in the wrong lane, because I'll be honest, I'm not fucking awake. And even though there's nobody on the road, the left lane is the lane I fucking drive in. Not for any other reason than that's what I fucking drive in. Now, I'm going to be honest and say, as long as you are not impeding traffic, that should be the standard. Not a minimum of 45, not a maximum of 65. Just don't fucking impede traffic. Kind of like the Autobahn in Germany. You know what? If you're not causing an accident, you should not be pulled over. If you're not
that's my
weaving in and out of traffic like that asshole. I can't remember. Maybe Sharif, you can tell me what his name is. What's that German dude that weaves in and out of traffic on a black Gixxer that has been arrested like 30 fucking times? For causing accidents and shit, but he did it all through Berlin, through Moscow, through all over the Autobahn, and he smokes cops on a regular basis. If you're doing that shit, yes, you deserve a ticket. You're causing accidents every mile.
If you're actually causing like death, harm, or like property damage or something like that, yeah, that's the thing. That's what I say. Like, no victim, no crime, and that's kind of the. I go to Bob Marley on it.
But then you have to abide by, and that's the problem. Too many people in the United States don't abide by that written law that the far left lane is just a passing lane. It's not a lane for you to stay in.
Yeah.
If you would abide by that, then I'm all for dropping the max, unless a curve is coming out.
Yeah, I was only bringing that whole thing up to like reinforce this idea that like when there's some of the things like that where someone is driving the speed limit and they get pulled over. So now you have this forced interaction because of the law that makes it to where like now you're pulled over on the side of the road, which is an even greater source for a potential accident, because now you have two cars pulled over on the side of the road and there's somebody standing outside the car on the shoulder and all this other kind of shit. And we're creating all this potential for people to get hurt when you could have just been left alone because nobody was getting hurt in the first place. And so that's kind of where I tend with all of this stuff is like there's ways to really use good methods of prevention, and I think education and like just letting people know what but I think a lot of times, just like with the roll bars that they've put on NASCAR cars and everything, and the helmets and shoulder pads and everything that they put on NFL players, we have reduced like skull fractures and some of these other things, but the paralysis and CTE and all the other like the catastrophic type stuff has skyrocketed because people when you
are hitting hard.
Yeah, when you create these like artificial, okay, we put these things in because these things keep you safe. Well, now you make it to where people are like, well, as long as I'm like within these rules or whatever, then everything's safe. It's like, no, that legal doesn't necessarily mean moral or ethical, and illegal and against the law doesn't necessarily mean that it's amoral or that it's unethical. And so that's where it comes back like that, like you're talking about, enforcing unjust laws or unconstitutional laws or anything like that. It makes it to where we create this framework that makes people think things are a certain way, and they lose their sense of like figuring shit out for themselves and like actually like using their common sense to guide their actions. And instead they're like, well, I'm only supposed to drive 65. So, and then they're like, you're forced into this dichotomy of like, well, do I drive 65 in the left lane and when this guy's going 63 and I'm just, I'm trying to pass him up or whatever. And then I stay in there for a little while because I can see that there's an 18-wheeler that's kind of slowing things down up ahead. And I don't feel like getting over and then letting people block me. And then I have to get back over and I have to slow down so I can back up because that shit happens. You end up, get pinned in and then you have to slow down to 55 so you can wait for the traffic to pass. Then you can finally pass it. So it just creates all this this weirdness that I wonder.
Before Shariff continues, I just want to say this is where we get to solutions.
Yeah.
And I think between the people that we have here right now, we can get to legitimate solutions. Chad, you play the libertarian role, which I think correctly balances both liberal and conservative. Shariff is law enforcement, so he can tell me whether or not it does or it may or may not work. And I am prospective politician, so I can tell you whether or not it's something. Yeah, basically whether or not I think it's something that I can actually propose and it's a solution. I do the 30,000, 100,000 foot view of everything. So now I view traffic laws, registration, registration, inspection, and licensing laws as to be stuff that, cite somebody for, but that's not the type of shit that you impound people for. You deal with shit. That's a civil issue, not a criminal issue, from my perspective. That is a very libertarian. Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, libertarian view on what I see to be a violation. When I see somebody possession of marijuana, under the influence of marijuana, not driving a vehicle, I see that as an issue that leave it the fuck alone.
Mm-hmm.
You're not bothering anyone. If you're not an issue, you're not starting fights. You're not friggin' trying to
I don't know very many people on weed starting fights, to be honest.
Exactly.
A lot more drunk people start fights than people high.
I smoked weed in high school.
And I've never smoked weed before. And I'm drinking
boys.
wine right now, but I'm not about to start a fight. Yeah. But anyway, it's definitely I mean, if there was weed bars instead of like drinking bars, how many times do you think they'd break out in a bar brawl?
Probably
none. Then I'll be like, man, do you have any more of that?
I watched one of my boys in high school admit to sleeping with one of my other boys in high school's sister, and they was like, "Dude, you're fucking up my high right now." I was like, wait a minute.
If they were at a bar, somebody got shot.
We'd be killing you right now, but right now you're like, dude, you totally fucked up the night. That set the tone. I'm like, yep, weed is not as big of an issue as most people think. However, I know Sharif knows we had guys in our unit that if they were not getting some, for lack of a better term, that they were getting in a fight if they were drinking. It was one or the other, and there was no substitute for either or.
So, I mean, the issue about weed or marijuana.
Continue. I'm going to step out for just a moment.
It's one that should just be resolved by our federal government and should be legalized across the board. I think it's the problem I have with drugs is the just like with many other laws or regulations you refer to, right? So, is that person hurting anybody else, right? Deliberate approach. Let him do cocaine while he's not hurting anybody else. Let him do heroin, he's not hurting anybody else. But the reality of the situation is they are. Because once they start using heroin, they run out of money real quick. And where do they get the money from for the next shot? It's committing burglaries, committing thefts, vehicle thefts, whatever they can get their hand on and sell to pay for their addiction. And methamphetamine is the same. So I never came across a person who was arrested for any hard drug possession. I'm not talking marijuana right now. I'm talking about methamphetamine, heroin, mainly. All right, cocaine is like the drugs, like just regular cocaine is like the drug of the rich, but like PCP, like crack cocaine. I never came across any one of these who did not have also a burglary in his prior list, who did not have at least 1 or 2 or 3 burglaries. That's where the problem lies. Yes, is he hurting anybody by taking the drug? No, he's only hurting himself. But to get that drug, he needs to hurt others. And then they end up with burglaries or even with home invasions. And these people are hurting everyone. Is this person hurting anybody by drinking and driving? Well, if he gets home safe, no. Is this a victimless crime? Yes. But the chances of him getting home safe are very, very minimal.
Yeah, there's other ways. I guess my perspective is there's other ways to handle that, and that's where like there's ways to empower people to be a little more responsible with that stuff from the very start, and even with the harder drugs versus marijuana. I think if you go back and you look at like how a lot of this stuff came about, opium's been around for a minute. And all these other things are these street, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, these improvised ways of making that same stuff that has been around for millennia, centuries, but it's doing it in a way because once it became outlawed, now you've created it's the same sort of thing that happened with alcohol in Prohibition. You had people, there were other things that were being put into the alcohol because now Now that you've sent it underground and you've made it criminal to have it, well, now you've actually raised the price. You've raised the impact that it's going to have on children, because now if I want to avoid the cops when I'm trying to sell my whiskey or moonshine or whatever it is, I'm going to have a kid bring it. Just same thing that they're doing with drugs. You know, I'm going to have a kid with it in his backpack, and he's going to run and he's going to drop it off at the corner over here because he's less likely to be suspected by the cops. You know, and so you by criminalizing this stuff, you have now created the same way that we created the organized crime that existed in the 20s of last century, where now all of these little mini mob bosses all over, you know, Al Capone and everybody else are going around with these little criminal empires, where now actual violent crime is happening because you've raised the stakes. You've raised the prices, you've raised the risk, because now I risk going to prison for life for carrying some liquor around. Well, now I'm going to be guarding that and we're going to be doing it in the dark, in the middle of the night, out in the middle of nowhere. And then somebody's going to run up on us because now this stuff is super valuable. They're going to shoot up our, you know, it's, you create all these different things with that stuff that if it were like
got your message, Chad.
Oh, it's cool. It's cool. It's all good.
I did not.
I mean,
realize
it's a good conversation. I do need to run though. But I think if you take those things to a more, if you decriminalize and legalize that stuff, make it to where now people are not, they don't become pariahs for this stuff. They don't get sent to jail for having those things. Then now you make it to where, okay, well, weed is totally okay now. Okay, well now, like I'm not necessarily looking for all these other different alternatives. And even if you are, now it's curated through a more clean process instead of this underground street. You know, I don't know who I'm getting it from. I'm just going to go try to find whoever I can sneak, you know, in the dark to get it from, where nobody else know that it's there. Instead, you've got the equivalent of like a pharmacy with this stuff in it, because we have tons of other stuff that's just as likely to cause problems and have people stealing shit and everything else. People are stealing for OxyContin. They're stealing for, you know, they're breaking into houses for all this other kind of stuff. And all that stuff is,
That's all opioids.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but that stuff's all legal. All that stuff is legal. That's all FDA legal stuff. And there's still people doing that stuff. So you're the legalizing it is not what is going to make that stuff happen. And what you need to do is you need to make it to where people have the proper information and the proper support that they need. And then when somebody does break in and harm someone or anything like that, you take care of that. But you've got you know, I don't know, you've got an addiction or whatever, we're going to throw you in prison is a whole different.
There's got to be a divide between the medical aspect of it, the civil aspect of it, and the criminal aspect of it. The criminal aspect of it is what I view is the only part of it that Shariff should have to deal with as a law enforcement officer. And I understand that as the first responder, he may have to deal with the civil aspect of it. Now, that civil aspect of it should be held legally totally separate from the criminal aspect of it. If you're dealing it, you're using it to keep sex slaves or human trafficking or some sort of shit. You're trafficking in large amounts of it. You're dealing it. I can understand that. That would be a criminal aspect of it. A civil aspect would be possession and under the influence. All right. And there are realistic standards that have already been implied, that have already been implemented, of what a possession standard is, which is personal use, and what a distribution level is, which is not personal use, and typically ends up, and what Shariff had mentioned earlier, there is a difference between the guy that has multiple dings on his record for burglary and stuff like that, versus the guy that's just smoking weed in a park while he's on a jog or whatever. Which I don't know why you would smoke in the middle
While
of a
you're
jog.
jogging. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But I've seen people get dinged for that. I don't know why. I mean, even when we were active duty, it seemed like people smoking cigarettes during a company run was like a real stretch. I mean, when you're running 15 miles, smoking doesn't sound like a good idea. But hey, you know what? People do dumb shit. My whole point is there is a medical aspect of the addiction. There is a civil aspect of the distribution or whatever. Then there's a criminal aspect of large scale distribution, the monetization, the whole criminal organizational network that I think we can correctly divide up. But I see the state being an issue in it because too many agencies profit off of the war on drugs. Too many agencies profit off. Too many agencies get money based off of not fixing the system, very similar to immigration and every other system that we have. When you
not to mention they were part of the reason that a lot of that stuff got here in the first place and got run into the streets the way they did. The CIA and the FBI and even some parts of the military where that stuff was coming back from Vietnam, and we've been bringing that stuff in via the state, and then the state turns around and they're getting it just like they always do. They get it on both sides.
Notice we got the best weed ever since the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Notice we got the best weed ever in the United States since the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Afghani Kush that everybody loves in California so freaking much did not just show up here post 2000s by sheer circumstance. Yeah, it did not just show up here by sheer circumstance. However, I will say there is the status quo that drives the problem not getting solved, and that is the issue of the day for damn near every situation in our government right now, is that there are people that profit off of the status quo not changing. How do we fix the status quo? This goes towards policing, policy, particular, because that's what we're talking about today. And in general, I see the only way to do it to stop electing the same type of people that we normally elect. To elect completely different people. We cannot elect the top 1% of society that deal in these same gray areas, that deal in these same crony environments, and expect them to act in completely different ways than everyone else that they deal with. It is arbitrary and completely, Trump was literally I want to say the antipathy of everything that we would have expected from somebody from that environment as far as his term in governments. And I don't want to talk parties or politicians, but I want to say that is an example of what I would consider somebody that may have been completely different, and it was solely by luck. It wasn't by our doing. We didn't go out there and elect a firefighter or a cop or a paramedic or a doctor or somebody that is not a lawyer, which is, last time I checked, the second least trusted profession in the world, next to used car salesman.
There was somebody who did both of those things, and he was in a very prominent position in a party I will not name. But
please name it. Name it. I am not above it.
It's it's the party that I belong to. But anyway, so what I wanted to say is that the thing that I thought was interesting. So like I have always, or not always, but I've been thinking about this from the standpoint of, because I think it's easy, and that's why that's why the Trump Biden thing was such a big deal for everybody. It's always a tool to obscure your local stuff, to obscure your state level stuff, because there's so much focus on that. And even the local and state stuff is tied to the presidential election. It'll be like, oh, this guy's a Trump supporter, this guy's a Biden supporter, or whatever kind of nonsense. And what I think, to your point about like the solutions, like thanks to folks like you and Sonny Johnson, who I know we both hold in high regard, what I have gone from is, let's try to figure out a way to take this thing from the top down and like, bring it down and bring it to the local level, is instead, or maybe not instead, but in addition, try to attack that, try to get that headshot, where we could take things down from the federal level and bring it back to the states and back to the local communities and to the people. But also at your local and community level, you've got to work, because I do a lot of this with my work. I'm in sales with these somewhat large corporations that you've got your corporate level folks and then you've got your local level folks. And if you don't have both of them bought in, the local folks can only do so much, because they try to get the budget to be able to do whatever I want, I'm trying to sell, and corporate says no. Well, so we've got to work on corporate. But what also happens if corporate says, hey, I want you guys to do this, I want you guys to use this product, and the local folks don't like me, don't know me, or whatever, then they're going to say, fuck this guy. I don't want to do this stuff with him. I want, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to just, try to make it, try to basically pull a fast one on corporate. And so we need to do both at the same time. But I think that local part is by far more important, because all of the people now, I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that is more selection than election, because these candidates that we see that make it to the stage are not the people that you and I would choose if we could choose. They are the choices that are presented to us. And they're like, hey, so, all right, you get the hot poker in one of three places: your eyeball, your ear, or your asshole. Which one do you want? And I'm like, how about no hot poker? I will take no hot poker anywhere in my body. I just instead want deep tissue massage. How's that? Nope, that's not on the menu. What some of that happens with is your local elections lead to regional and district wide elections, lead to statewide elections, lead to national elections. A lot of these politicians who are senators and in the House of Representatives, they got their start on city council somewhere. They got their start running for sheriff or running for whatever the case may be. And we've got to start there.
I did not think that I was going to bring it up, but Swalwell, and Fang. I'm not going to do any really bad puns because it would be too easy, and I don't believe in easy jokes. Okay,
I do. I love easy jokes.
This is not a joke, man. Come on, man. I just want to say, as we look at what could have been a, I want to say, me and Sharif are conservatives. I am a pure constitutionalist. However, I take pragmatic means to achieve the constitutionalism and the ideas that we originally founded upon. And I am well steeped in the ideologies of our founders. I read their personal writings, their books, De Montesquieu, Alexis de Tocqueville, and I love Ayn Rand because she's fucking awesome in every way, shape, and form. I want to say, I think there's a way that we can achieve.
Oh, come here. Sorry, my little boy.
Oh, is that the baby?
Yeah.
Is that the baby?
Yeah. Come here, buddy.
Let me Let me see.
See, I can already tell just from this whole interaction that like Shariff is great at conflict resolution and de-escalation, just because of the way he's like handled this stuff. He's just been like, "Hey, come here, it's okay. Yeah, come here.
Look at that! Look at that head of hair. That did not come from you, bro."
That's funny.
Yeah, mine is pale white. So
it's okay. I have full grays now. And by the way, I noticed Chad is wearing a Hotep hat. Shout out to the Hotep.
I'm also wearing my marathon shirt. Shout out to Nipsey Hussle.
Oh, I am wearing Felicia Killings, Law of Sowing and Reaping.
There you go.
Shall always be in effect. And I realized Shariff is wearing Guardian Outdoors. That's my bros network right there, helping veterans. And we very much need that. We've lost a few guys since the end of the war, and we're constantly fighting that. However, and the war is not over yet, because obviously it followed us home. However, I want to say, in regard to there's a long-term aspect to conservatism, which I view libertarians as being as close to constitutionality as physically possible. And I don't view you guys as getting a fair shake, because your ideology is very rarely clarified.
No, that's definitely true. Yeah, it's hard, and it's a struggle too to try to do that. You guys
get screwed over. I think you guys get screwed over by people gravitating.
We hold ideals. We have our like idealism on the one hand, and that's why I tried to couch that when I was speaking earlier. I kind of fumbled it a little bit. I was kind of all over the place, but generally speaking, what I'm looking for is how do I uphold and communicate my ideals, like what I think things would look like in an ideal world, but then at the same time find the most practical and pragmatic and solutionary way to get there in the real world. Because me just wanting things to be a certain way, it's awesome. Me just wanting things to be a certain way doesn't make it happen. Like, you have to do the work, and you have to work it in all sorts of different ways. And one of the things I want to say, like, so since we've talked about conflict resolution and de-escalation, and even like having our own right to self-defense and everything, I wanted to let everybody know that I just confirmed today we're gonna have Maj on as our guest on Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, Maj Toure is going to be on. I had him in Baton Rouge a couple of weeks ago for a Black Guns Matter event in Baton Rouge, and that was great. And then now we're going to get him on for at least for that first hour. So that'll be really fun, because that's really like what our show's direction has been, is trying to figure out a way to get to some of the solutions of some of these things, and not just bitch and complain about how bad things are or how bad things are getting or anything like that. Is try to find ways. And so what I try to do is I try to bring my perspective to things, but I also, I do my best to try to listen to, like, because I came into this thing knowing that, that I wasn't going to necessarily completely agree with everybody and every opinion on here, but I wanted to listen, because I want to understand, like, because that's how we solve this stuff, is by talking to each other, listening to each other, and understanding where we're coming from, so that we can find that place where we can say, okay, look, I agree with you on this. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on what we agree on, and let's work in that direction.
Yeah.
I view the entire political spectrum. I see Shariff in the same way, which is why I invited him on. We have other conservative law enforcement people that we've served with who are very conservative, and I mean evangelical conservative. And I wanted to have on somebody who is who I consider to be a solutionary. Now, Shariff may not be.
I think I'm going to have to clock out.
That's okay.
I just want to. Can I just say I never met you before today, but you're an awesome dude. I appreciate you. We probably would need to talk a little bit more about a lot of this stuff to kind of get down, into more of the details and kind of come to a better understanding on some stuff. But what I heard I loved, from your perspective. I think that where you approach this stuff from is from a place of compassion and of trying to do the right thing by people. And that's what we need is we need more people turning that switch on in their hearts and in their minds.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I appreciate you with that.
And I think I really appreciate you and your opinion. It's always nice to see more than, just like your conservative friends talking about the same thing over and over again.
Right.
Yeah, different viewpoints to come to an agreement between all of them. I think that's like the basis of our country.
Yeah.
Where our country came from, and that's how we built this country up, and that's what it's supposed to be. And I hope and I pray, that things will change in this country with the aspect of how police officers are viewed and how our police officers view, the public and
their responsibilities. Yeah.
Responsibilities, yes. Because without compassion for the people you're working with, there is no policing. It's just a development of hate, a cycle of hate that's going to continue on. I hate who I'm dealing with. That person's going to hate me, and we're going to hate each other back and forth. And that's how you get absolutely nowhere. And you always see that with great examples where police officers shown compassion for the people, and it develops into great communities. Absolutely fantastic communities with trust and love and protection to both sides. And that's for me the only possible way this could change on the low level from the police side, from us as law enforcement, coming from us. If the more compassionate we are with people, the more we try to understand them, the better our relationship is going to be. From the top level, we have to, there's laws that need to be changed, man, and there's regulations at the local and city levels that need to be changed because they're just absolutely ridiculous. But in all, the officers have a lot to consider themselves too, and how that we do this right.
All right. Well, Shariff, I know you got your son to deal with, and I'm sure your little princess wants to have you back. How you doing, princess? I will have you on again to talk about policing throughout the pandemic, because I think there needs to be a clarification of what should have been done and what should not have been done. And I think you are a proper perspective in that conversation with your experience. Chad, I thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you being here for far longer than you had planned to be here. It was a great conversation, and thank you to Corey and Sol. Again, talking about solutions and not necessarily parties and politics. This is the Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. Thank you guys for coming on. I'll have you guys back again soon, each for your own lane and your own expertise, which I value on this podcast because I think we don't get enough. You guys,
good. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you.
Man. See you. Good to meet you, Shariff. Peace.
You too. Very good. Nice to meet you, Chad. And I'll see you around, brother.
See you around, brother. All right. So,
Chad, we're off of YouTube now? Okay.
All right. Oh, no. I still got you on.
We're still...
I want to thank you for coming on.
Man.
Your show is fantastic. The more I watch of it, the more I love. And your cousin has been absolutely spectacular in the comments today.
My cousin. he's more like brother from another mother than cousin. So no, we're not related. I don't know if you knew that, but me and Marcus are not related at all. But
okay,
we are related in I don't know, in some sort of
spirit,
cosmic way. Yeah. So I'm like, my birthday is the 19th of January, so it's like right on the cusp of Capricorn and Aquarius. Yeah. So he had started that the Aquarian Anarchy thing, and then it was weird, like the whole like lockdown thing starts, and he had been asking me to come on for a while, and I never could do it because I was always traveling or something like that. I always had something going on. I was like, hey man, look, I'm free. If you want me to come on at some point, he's like, can you come on this week? I was like, oh shit, okay, all right. So I come on, and then he asked me to come on again, and then after that he was like, hey, do you want to just like stay on the show? And I was like, all right, fine. So here we are, and now we've got the show with me, him, and Nico. And Nico's a really amazing dude. He's a cool dude. He's got a tremendous perspective on life from the standpoint of a 22-year-old. Like, he comes across as like an old head in a lot of ways, he's still kind of trying to find his way on some stuff, but Nico is like, he's got this understanding of things that is really refreshing for me to see from somebody. I know when I was his age, I was not concerned with this type of stuff that he's concerned with. I had like, very stupid, superficial stuff. Even though I was already engaged to be married and ended up marrying my wife when we were 23 and everything, I was still an idiot. Like I was like, I had all my ideas in the wrong places, and I was willing to just kind of let people rule over me as long as I could just enjoy stupid shit, So it's been really fun, and Marcus is. He's always got. I'm surprised he didn't have even more stuff in the comments, but he's got a tremendous depth and wealth of knowledge that he's read a lot, studied a lot of different things, studied a lot of different perspectives, and it really comes in handy on the show because he's always got a quote from some book or something. There's somebody, some 1,000-year-old author that wrote some shit, or he'll go back and be like, well, yeah, Voltaire once said that, it's like, oh gosh, all right, okay, here we go. So it's really good. I really appreciate you having me on.
I loved having you on, Day. We're gonna have to do this again because I don't think the policing issue or proper solutionary responses to what we have going on today is going to disappear soon.
No.
But thank you for coming on. You have a good night, and congratulations to your son for a good basketball game.
It was a first time. He's a freshman, so it's like, first time with the new school and everything and all that good stuff. So it's kind of a big deal for him. But yeah, he's making his way. So, yep.
All right. Well, I will see you in the Twitterverse. Thank you for coming on. You have a great night.
You too, man. Peace.
Later. All right, everyone. That was the 8th special episode of Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast based on policing and policy. And I wanted you guys to have a good idea of the different perspectives on where we stand, and a good conversation, not based on politics and party, but based on solutions. I'm going to close out with my outro. So have a good night, and I hope you guys come back.
And what kind of player am I? Am I an offensive man or a defensive man? That's right, I'm neither. I play my opponent. If he likes to attack, I force him to defend himself. If he's a cautious man, I draw him into dangerous water. See, you get so frustrated playing defensive positions, you make stupid moves you never make if you were thinking. When you come here, boy, check that shit at the door.
I'm at the top of my game, cut the check. Somebody better king me, I'm the best. Let's play a game of checkers. Better yet, the game don't love nobody. Let's play chess.